Okay, shall I go? Um, I move that the BAR members certify by recorded vote that, to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act and identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
A second.
Okay. Carl got it first. So I'll call a vote. Mr. McClure,
Aye.
Mr. Gastinger,
Aye.
Mr. Zemer,
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz,
Yes.
Mr. Edwards,
Aye.
Miss Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Lehendro. Thank you. That was an aye.
Stain, right?
Mr. Moore.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. The vote passes unanimously. So it's 5:29, and for members of the public who are watching right now, we'll actually be starting the meeting 10 minutes late. So we will reconvene at 5:40, and we will start the meeting then. And I'll just repeat that because it just got to 5:30, so people might be watching on channel 10, so you can go ahead and excuse yourselves. So to members of the public who just logged on or watching on channel 10, the BAR will be meeting 10 minutes late this evening at 5:40. So we will reconvene at that time. Thank you. Carl, I'm just going to go ahead and start giving my introduction so we can start right at 5:39. So people still have a few more seconds of break if you'd like. But good evening, everybody. My name is Robert Watkins. I'm city staff. Welcome to the April 2021 Charlottesville Board of Architectural Review virtual meeting. We are now live on channel 10 for the public, and we're continuing to stream on the city's social media channels. I will be moderating tonight's meeting, at least on the virtual side of things. And before I hand things over to Carl Schwartz, the chair of the BAR, I'll go over a few guidelines and housekeeping tips just to make sure that everything runs smoothly. So first, for everybody who might be watching from home, I will introduce the meeting participants who are online right now. First, we have Carl Schwartz, the chair of the BAR. We're also joined by Brett Gastinger, who is the vice chair. Other BAR members include Tim Moore, whose camera is off right now, but that's fine. Jody Lehendro, Sherry Lewis, James Zemer, Andy McClure, and our newest member, Robert Edwards. We're also joined by Jeff Werner, who's not on screen right now, but he is my colleague and city staff. Throughout the meeting, applicants and other participants will join the meeting as needed. For members of the public who are on the call right now who'd like to provide public comment, there are several places in the agenda where you can speak. At the beginning of the meeting, we allow time for comments from the public for items not on the agenda. This is also for items that might be on the consent agenda. Then before the BAR deliberates on each individual application, we allow time for public comment. In order to provide comment, we ask that you register for the meeting if you haven't already through the city calendar online, and then you'll become an attendee to the Zoom webinar. And then when we get to the comment portion of the agenda, you can raise your hand using the raise hand feature and I will unmute you. Then our timer will begin and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Let's see. For applicants who are currently online, you're currently in the meeting as an attendee, which means you have limited audio and video capabilities. When your project comes up on the agenda for review, I'll promote you to panelist. So you'll have mute and unmute capabilities and we can see you. When I promote you from attendee to panelist, you'll be booted out of the meeting temporarily, and then you'll automatically come back in as a panelist. So just hang tight for that. Also for applicants, during the staff and applicant presentations for each project, I will be sharing my own screen to scan through pages of your application for visual aid. During the BAR deliberations, I'm happy to share my screen again to reference specific pages or drawings. So if you'd like me to show a specific page, just please tell me what page you want me to go to. And also, like we've done during the past meetings, we will have short periodic breaks as needed and as directed by our chair. Finally, it's time for me to hand things over to Carl Schwartz, but throughout the meeting, please let me know if you have any additional questions. Thank you.
All right, welcome to this regular monthly meeting of the Charlottesville Board of Architecture Review. Staff will introduce each item, followed by the applicant's presentation, which should not exceed 10 minutes. I will then ask for questions from the public, followed by questions from the BAR. After questions are closed, I'll ask for comments from the public. For each application, members of the public are each allowed 3 minutes to ask questions and 3 minutes to offer comments. Speakers shall identify themselves and provide their address. Comment should be limited to the BAR's purview, that is regarding only the exterior aspects of the project. Following the BAR's discussion and prior to taking action, the applicant will have up to 3 minutes to respond. Thank you for participating. And I think as Robert has said, please note that the times given on our agenda are approximates only. So right now we have matters from the public not on the agenda. So if you have anything to speak about that's not on the agenda or anything that is on our consent agenda, now would be the time to do so. The consent agenda items are 200 West South Street and 16 Elliewood Avenue.
So please raise your hand if you'd like to provide comment. You can do that using the participant tab in Zoom, or if you're calling in, you can press *9. So Carl, we have 8 attendees and it looks like many of them are applicants, and I'm not seeing any raised hands.
Perfect. All right. So like I said, our consent agenda is our BAR meeting minutes from December 15th, 2020, 200 West South Street and 16 Elliewood Avenue. Would anyone like to approve the consent agenda or pull anything from it?
I guess I'll either pull one or have a question on 200 South Street. Basically, I was there the other day and it looks like they've already gotten started. So you know how that plays into this.
Maybe pretend they haven't.
Okay.
Anyone?
I move to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and call a vote with that. Mr. Schwartz,
Yes.
Miss Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. McClure.
I don't know if I'm allowed to vote, but I vote yes.
Mr. Alejandro,
Aye.
Mr. Zemer,
Aye.
Mr. Gastinger,
Aye.
Mr. Moore,
Aye.
and Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Thank you.
I think for procedure, I think Andy, you probably should have abstained. All right.
Robert, I abstain. That's what I meant to say. I abstain.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Noted. Okay, thank you. So with Mr. McClure abstaining, the vote is to seven in favor, not opposed. It doesn't matter. I'll move on.
Motion passes.
Yes, motion passes.
All right, so we move on to deferred items, 420 West Main Street.
And I'll go ahead and promote Greg Jackson, who represents this project, panelist.
So, sorry, I missed I heard James ask about 200 South Street, but that wasn't pulled.
No, it wasn't.
Right.
He was just asking the work is already started, if not finished.
Okay, so yeah, I've been working a lot with them. And had told them that we reviewed this, that it was going to be on consent agenda. So yeah, there's some things that have been happening, and but they, knew they had to finalize this with you. But I have let them know that it wasn't a whole lot substantial that had been expressed in that preliminary discussion. So it's possible they've done more. Okay, so jumping into 420 West Main, let me find myself here. Here we go. And December meeting minutes were long. Go. So still not there yet. One more roll.
If you want to read from my screen, Jeff, it's up.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Robert. This is a COA request that was deferred last month for 420 West Main. This is a former gas station that constructed in the 1960s. It is contributing to the downtown ADC district. And the request is the construction of a canopy above the dining area that's at the front of the gas station that will be connected back onto the main structure. Excuse me. And there were some questions the BAR had about how it would be attached, and that was thus the deferral. The applicants provided some details in the drawings, and also there's some narrative in in their application, also in the staff report, that addresses the questions that you all asked. And so with that, I will pass it on to Greg, and let him offer what he can, and then let's get into that discussion and make sure we understand what he has been changed and if that's acceptable.
And Greg, I'm still sharing my screen, but I can go to whatever page you need me to.
I had to unmute. Hi, everybody. So
Hi.
after our last session and discussion, we tried to kind of pick up on all the comments, and the canopy profile is much thinner. The edge is different in that it's sloped, and it's able to kind of set down from the existing canopy. And the building itself, in a comment, I think it was Breck, we took it on to make to emphasize the celebrate the color of the canopy, make the canopy a color and bring it out. And one of the additions over time was this yellow tile structure, and being that that's Little Star's color as well, we went with that. Seems to fit a gas station type of feel as well, to really snap out the canopy and bring that on around the building itself, so that it really helps the building get stronger and be more emphasized in and of itself. And for the lighting, we looked at what we thought would be appropriate, what we wanted, and big fans seemed to fit what works there and what we wanted. We wanted to keep it really simple, so we had the lights with the fans, and they're dimmable, and they meet the criteria that you guys gave for the rear 414. That if we did lighting, it should meet this with the certain criteria. And another thing we did was there's on the existing canopy, those two slanted columns that hold up, that canopy, the existing columns or rest on a W8 that then holds up W10s. That used to go all the way across, and we figured out a way to not do that all the way across, to stop it. You just leave it where, as existing, and the new columns would go straight up to W10s, just the way it's configured. And that further makes it thinner. And then we also followed through with some specifics in the designs of the fascia profile. That's basically a gutter, and making the whole thing thinner. The internal gutter went to the outside and created that profile. And then the connection to the canopy itself. We worked on that a little bit to make that stand out a little bit more as something that's different from the existing, but also makes a cleaner connection. And then open for questions.
All right. Well, thank you, Greg. Let's first start with, are there any questions from the public? Please raise your hand or press *9.
Looking at the list again, Carl, I don't see any raised hands.
If I've got the panelist or the attendee window open, would I be able to see any? Or
yes, yeah, but I don't mind. I don't mind being delegated that task.
I just don't know if I'm being. All right.
We're seeing the same thing.
And the owner of the restaurant, Ben Clore, is an attendee and can come on if need.
No questions?
Comments?
Well, actually, I guess I'm going to ask a question. I'm sorry. And Greg, you probably knew where this was coming from. This one, the emailed questions. So you did mention, I guess, the flashing and everything where the new roof meets the old. You said you intend to use a adhered flashing. So So I guess you seem confident this is going to work. I'm still a little confused as to how it's going to work, but so I'm may give you the benefit of the doubt, but are you going to have to remove the brake metal, flash under it, put it back, or you're just going to tape flashing to the face of the metal? What's your thought on how that works? It just seems like a messy material to mess around with.
I consulted with the roofer, Jack Masloff of Lynch Roofing, and he felt that would be an appropriate solution to use the membrane tape to the poly roof, along the edge there, and where it attaches to the back of the building. That we likely might put some kind of metal flashing and tape attach it to the building with the membrane tape that allows the metal flashing to go over top.
Okay.
But we keep it all low profile and pick the appropriate color. I think that I had said white that would work with the roofing.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Yeah, sorry to keep picking on that. It just
that's
know why it just kind of
a little closer.
confuses me. All right, are there any comments from the public? It looks like not. If you do have a comment from the public, please raise your hand or press star 9. Don't see anything. So comments from the board.
I'll make some. Greg, I really like the way you resolved the gutter. Greg,
Yes.
I really like the way you resolved the gutter. Because remember, originally you had like a really small one, right? And now the big ones are very clean.
Yeah. Say that part again, Tim.
I really like the way you resolved the gutter, because originally, remember, you had a 4-incher, and you show it in your diagram, but now having that one single gutter and getting the drain down the back really works.
Yeah.
I think
that makes the whole, we went to a C channel, a C10 instead of a C12 out there, and that helped narrow it down. Couldn't go any further than that with the W10s. But the gutter box, the outer shroud, so to speak, is slanted and at 9.5 inches thereabouts. So I think that's going to be the profile you see and perceive.
Right.
And then, we're able to get an internal slope gutter all the way across and down at the right slope. It needs about 4 inches or so. Down about it.
But I think it's a good resolution. I also think that you've really resolved, at least to my mind, the questions we had about its, being too integrated with the other structure, that it's really distinctly its own animal. And I think the color helps play that game too. But by not carrying that one beam through underneath, and it works for me. I think it's really a big improvement.
In preparation for this meeting, I had dinner at the Little Star patio on Sunday night, and I thought to myself, wow, wouldn't this be better if this structure was approved on Tuesday? It was really good, though.
You got to send the bill for that dinner to Jeff.
Right.
I too think this is a huge improvement. I thank you, Greg. I think the color really just hits it in all the right places. It really distinguishes and pulls out the original canopy in a nice way, and I appreciate the clarity and distinction between the pieces. The only piece that I didn't notice on first review, but the multicolor string lights, I'm a little bit concerned about. Would prefer a single white light if given the prominence of that corner, but I think that's, we can talk about that as with the rest of the BAR.
Yeah, I think that those lights can change colors. We can get any type of product, but my understanding that they'll be either all white, all red, all green on St. Patrick's Day, all red on Valentine's. Maybe they can all be different colors at one time. I don't know. But you know, I think 95% of the time they'll just be regular white lights dimmed.
You can't balance the color? Do they have a DMX control? Do you know, can you balance the color? Like play with it, Greg?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's all very adjustable by your iPhone per the image shown as well. But that's just a particular product that if you guys have an opinion about not having green lights on St. Patrick's Day, I think they don't have to do that. Not having green and red lights on Christmas, that's fine. Yeah, so it does say multicolor, but I think the intent is that they can be different colors.
Or
That
that you
is
can
my
balance your white, yes?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll certainly look to do that, but I don't know that for detail.
I was curious. Yeah.
And I think Ben has his hand raised. I don't know if Robert, you able to bring him in, the owner of the restaurant?
Sure. So Ben, you're going to be promoted, which means you'll be booted out temporarily.
I guess while he comes back in, to clarify, the primary light source is coming from the ceiling fans, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
But they, that handles or addresses having a more permanent type of light. I like having the fans. I think the big fans will be really, really neat. They're quite large. So, I think that type of larger fan goes at a slower RPM, so it has sort of a nice effect. And it meets the criteria, I believe, that you guys were looking for another project.
I'm not going to hold you up for the string lights. I think, we let the Violet Crown have a little bit of fun. I don't know why we, I think I think you've done a great job. Anyone else? Any concerns, or do we have a motion, or does anybody want to, anybody agree with Breck? Should we say something about the colored string lights?
If this helps, I think the concern about the different colored lights is primarily that sort of the sign that's on all night and you have that red glow. So, possibly if this is lighting during hours of operation, that might help. It's just that not a sign out there on West Main that's up all night creating a red glow in West Main. Just a thought.
Yeah, the purpose of the lights is actually to be able to match them via, as you mentioned, DMX to the same color temperature as our lighting inside the restaurant. So it's just going to be an amber glow.
And just another quick question. I was just looking at the big ass fan site. What's the color, the temperature on the fans? Do you know? For their lights?
The light on that fan?
Isn't there a light on the fan, or am I wrong?
I can promise you that whatever the light is, we'll be taking it out and putting in a warmer color temperature bulb.
Got it. I just wondered. Okay.
Obviously,
your food looks a lot better at 2,700 than it does at 4,000.
Exactly.
It comes with 3,000. Tim, it's written in the document.
Okay, I just didn't
94 color.
CRI.
I got it. I see it. 94 CRI. That's good.
That's unicorn good.
Yeah, that's very good.
Mr. Chair, can I make a motion?
Please do.
Having considered the standards set forth within the city code, including the ADC district design guidelines, I move to find that the proposed patio canopy at 420 West Main Street satisfies the BAR's criteria and is compatible with this property and other properties in the downtown ADC district, and that the BAR approves the application as submitted.
Second.
Okay. With that recorded, I'll go ahead and call a vote. Mr. Schwartz,
Yes.
Mr. Zemer,
Aye.
Mr. Gastinger,
Aye.
Mr. McClure,
Aye.
Miss Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Lehendro,
Aye.
Mr. Moore,
Aye.
and Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Thank you. The vote is unanimous and the motion passes.
Nice job.
Thank
Yeah, it
you.
looks nice, looks nice, you guys.
Thank you all.
Good.
So yeah, Greg and Ben, I will demote you back to attendee, and then I will go ahead and promote the next applicants.
I like that the expansion next door at 416, 418 is shown in these renderings. So hopefully that'll happen. Okay.
We're on a 517 Rugby Avenue.
Correct. And introduce it. So this is a certificate of appropriateness application for 517 Rugby Road. It is in the Rugby Road University Circle, Venable ADC district. It is a contributing structure, and the house is also on the Rugby Road University Corner Historic District on the National Register, in the Virginia Landmarks Register. It was constructed in 1910 as a private residence. It's a colonial revival. It's one of the few in the district covered entirely with wood shingles, although the survey suggests that the wood shingles are not original and that the building had been clapboard, which is possibly still beneath the shingles. The house features a symmetrical 3-bay front facade, hip roof, and a front hipped dormer, lattice casement windows. On the south side facade is a 2-story bay. On the front, the east facade is a center bay, disc-style porch with attenuated Roman Doric columns and a hip roof. The entrance door features geometrically glazed side lights and elliptical fan light transom. In 1964, the house transitioned to a fraternity house, and as it is currently used. There were a prior BAR request to this, and it is germane to this. There's a wood deck in the front that it extends the existing porch, and that the BAR reviewed that, and that's in the staff report. And the COA request is for the construction of an addition at the rear of the house, and also to remove the existing front porch and reconstruct it at a different size. And I let the applicant know, now I don't have any numbers, but the code requires a pre-application conference for projects that will exceed $350,000, and I think it's safe to assume this one will. So while this did come in as a formal request, my recommendation is that the BAR review it as a preliminary discussion and defer it if necessary, or grant a deferral if requested by the applicant. I'll also say that it's short on information. So as far as if this were a formal submittal coming, I would be a little stronger in what it doesn't, what is not provided. Relative to the front porch, this is a similar discussion to what we had over on Chancellor Street. I think the evidence suggests that the porch as it is now, and this is not including the wood decking wings that were added, but the center bay front porch is we can assume original. If not original, it is in the location and of the size of the original porch. So the reconstruction to a full width porch, while not out of keeping with this style of house, it is not in keeping with what was originally there in 1910. So, but as far as the addition goes, I think, other than materials, resolution materials, things like that, I don't know if there's anything significant that staff's concerned about there. And then last, there's certainly when you do something of this nature, there's going to be site work and possibly landscaping involved. And so that may need to be discussed. So using the, the checklist that we've applied in the last projects of this nature, I think very similar to 125 Chancellor Street. That and it will be a similar discussion even later this evening about another addition on the rear of the house. So I think following the checklist, walking through what's there, what's not, what information maybe still is needed, and any opinions the BAR may or may not have about the proposed design, I think would really be helpful and get this to the point where we can get a final submittal. So any questions for me?
Yes, so I'm confused. Is this a COA application or is this a preliminary discussion?
So it came in as an application. So
that's what I still see at the
right.
top of this, right?
I'm sorry. Right. So I'm calling it what it is. And I mean, I didn't normally, I don't know, conversation with applicants beforehand will say, but this came in as an application. And so it's as I said, I don't know the cost of this. It might be a $200,000 addition. But even if it were, I think that the information is lacking enough for you all to issue a COA. But given that it came in as an application, so, in treating it as such, you all can still have that discussion and then defer at the end for action at a later date.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to know what it is that we're reviewing here. What the applicant wants us to review.
Well, the applicant should respond and tell us what they want, what he wants us to review. But I think we need to treat this as a preliminary discussion because, again, as Jeff said, it's not a complete application. There are some missing documents, anyways. Is that all right?
Well, is that what the applicant wants? It seems to me this is.
So our ordinance requires that if it's over what, Jeff, it's $200,000.
I think it's 350,000.
Okay.
There are a lot of numbers in my head tonight. So, but yeah, 350,000.
All right. Well, Garrett, I guess you can tell us if you think your construction cost is going to be more or less than that. But that's where this our ordinance requires that this is a preliminary discussion. If it ends up being more than that.
No, that's understood. So therefore, with that, we expect to exceed that $350,000 cap, and so therefore, if this could be treated as our required preliminary discussion, that we could receive feedback from the board, we would appreciate that.
Thank you.
I have another question for staff. Jeff, I thought I heard you say that the expansion of the current existing front porch deck was approved by previous BAR, but the staff report says prior BAR actions, front wood deck determined the enlargement of the decks on east elevation is not appropriate. And so
it was reviewed
and proposed as
like
deck railing not
Yeah,
approved as proposed.
So it was actually a very poorly written. I thought I edited it correctly, but yeah, the understanding is that the deck was approved, but not the materials. So ASIC was the, and I'll go look while you're, but to be clear also on, so when someone comes in with an application, I mean, I can say, this is incomplete. I'm not even sending it to the BAR, but I mean, the point is we still want to have some review of it. So you all can defer it to next month. You have that right. And then it would come back. And the applicant can bring the same thing back, pay the fee, and the opportunity for you all to say, well, if we have to take action, then we'll deny it. So there's no, by accepting an application and bringing it to you does not compel you all to consider approval if it's not ready to be approved. So I will look up and get a clarification on what happened. But yeah, my understanding was that the deck was okay, but not the material and some railings. But if you all want to proceed with the discussion, I'll do the.
Yeah, I think it'd just be helpful to know just clarity on that, just to know if this particular applicant steps in line with BAR actions and approvals or not. I mean, I don't have to know that right now. I'm not trying to hold us up.
Garrett, why don't you why don't you go ahead and present, yeah, we can keep this discussion going. Hopefully we can make this as helpful as possible for you.
And Garrett, again, I'm happy to share my screen for your application.
Okay, that would be great. And so primarily there's two elements happening here. One is the front porch replacement. And then the other larger move is the addition out the western part towards the back of the lot, basically there. And if you scroll down to here, you can essentially see, so the grayscaled portion is the existing house. And then with the new addition, basically on the left-hand side of the sheet, the intent here is to continue with materials as far as the asphalt roofing and tying into that, hardy plank siding and brick foundation work, along with clad window units is what we're looking to do here. We are tying in the new construction basically behind the mass of the existing building is the intent here. And you can see that. So this is the kind of that south elevation portion there. Also remove, and then, so the north section here again with the existing on the left-hand side and the new on the right. Is what we're working with. I guess, are there more specific questions here, or do you just want me to kind of continue to walk through, Carl? Or?
That's up to you. If you think if the presentation speaks for itself, we can just if the application speaks for itself, we can just move right into questions.
I guess that would be our hope. I mean, certainly scrolling down and kind of looking at the images that accompany this as well.
Garrett, can I ask you one question?
Sure.
Is the existing house still wood shingled that's painted white, and the addition is clapboard, proposed to be clapboard?
It's wood siding.
Yeah.
And then the addition is proposed to be cement board siding.
So the existing house is not shingle. It's
Now, and that's,
if you scroll, you can see there's the images of it.
well, I see white. I just didn't know if it was
sorry.
shingles painted white or if it clapboard. So I mean, so the reference reading that it was shingled, it's not
anymore.
no, and that's what I'm saying. It's not, so in this older report, it says in 1987, they removed the wood shakes. So presumably that's the entirety I see on the rear. So I think you're right, Jody. I think it is, at this point in time, it is all clapboard.
Okay, thank you.
All right, well, just for procedure, are there any questions from the public? Please raise your hand or press *9.
I do see a raised hand, Eric Edwardson. So Eric, I am going to allow you to talk, but I think you still have to unmute yourself after I do so. But I'll do that right now, and you'll have 2 minutes to speak.
Yeah, this is Eric Edwardson. I'm a member, I'm an officer and director of the alumni of Alpha Mu that owns the house. I was raising my hand actually to mention that it's masonite siding, currently clapboard. I was gonna say it was replaced in '87. It used to be the shingles that had been there were creosote coated by then, and they pulled it off and replaced it all then.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm also here to answer any other historical questions. I was there in that 87 to 91 range, and then for graduate school through 95. So I've got some decent background on it.
Great, I'll keep you online.
Well, are there any other questions from the board? Historical or otherwise?
So knowing you have masonite siding, you wouldn't consider replacing that? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, it has degraded in a number of places pretty seriously, and I know they've had some trouble. You can see the siding comes down pretty low to the ground in a lot of places, and the water has done damage to it over the years. I mean, I defer to my experts like Garrett as to the best materials, but from what little I know, I'm not a construction or architecture person, that the hardy plank was a better product at this point.
I mean, just knowing that it wasn't, the shingles were removed and it's not an original material, and it does have a tendency to degrade, seems like it would be a nice opportunity. And I think the hardy plank would fit our guidelines. I wouldn't have any heartache about replacing the masonite if you wanted to do that.
Oh yeah, no, we do want to. Yeah, for sure. That's,
okay. Okay. Yeah, sorry. Yes. I heard the.
I heard the question. The opposite in my head was, did we want to keep the masonite? And I was thinking, no. But
okay. I thought Garrett said that the clapboard on the existing building would remain, and then it would be hardy plank on the rest. So sorry, I must have misheard.
Yeah, I was thinking stylistically, maybe that was really the question.
And to clarify the earlier question, so there was the flanking decks that you see were in place, and in 2014, the request was to extend that further, I guess, around the side, on the south side. So that's what was not approved, but the wood, those wing, it was like pressure treated wood decks, they were there at that time. And then there was a series of other improvements the gentleman was talking about also that were done back then in the 80s. So the 2014 request looks like some improvements that were approved, but it was the extension of the deck using an ASIC material and a different kind of railing that was not. So there's no, so what you see that's not, it didn't go in without BAR review. It happened, I think, very much prior to BAR being in, reviewing that as a house within a district.
So I apologize if this is on the drawings. I'm having my PDF is not behaving right now. The new porch, is that intended to match the existing, just be bigger? Is it like, are you copying the details, or are you approximating it and just making a larger front porch?
No, the intent was to take those details and carry those over the kind of those bays. So the existing wood porch extensions there, those would be rebuilt. But the intent was to go ahead and take that existing center bay and extend it over the front elevation.
And all the materials on there, are they all composite?
Yes.
Okay.
Garrett, is there
sorry, just to clarify on that. So the center two columns, basically, you're tearing off that original porch completely and replacing with 4 new columns and a new roof. That's the intent?
That's the intent, but keeping with the details that are there now. Basically, that's in that center bay.
Right.
We would rework the front, but use that center bay in order to drive those details.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
So Garrett, is the, sorry, is the current, go ahead.
Sherry.
Garrett, is the current profile of the roof hip, and are you replicating that on the new one? The
It is.
pictures aren't really clear about what the existing is. It's hard to tell.
Yes, the existing is hipped.
Okay.
You can see if there's there in image 05, you can see the angle of it.
Okay, in 06, you can kind of see it too a little bit. But but it definitely is a little bit of a different profile. Is the height of the roof the same from, I guess, the bottom of the existing porch? I mean, would the columns be the same height, I guess is my question.
Yes, that would be the intent.
My only concern would be the beautiful light over the door, just making sure that that's visible, and because we're not seeing drawings with dimensions and a little bit more detail, where I just wanted to confirm that would be important for my vote.
Okay.
I mean, the thing I was just going to say is, if I were to take the porch drawing literally, I wouldn't say that it really mimics the. I mean, for instance, the columns seem far more slender and the eave more exaggerated. And I'd be surprised if the roof pitch wasn't flatter. So the porch looks more, as drawn, seems more generic than specific to that detail. Am I right about that? Because if you look at the entablature in the photo, the eave appears to have a lot more sort of projection to it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and we could certainly adjust. I mean, if that's a concern, I mean, we can certainly adjust that. Ideally, just adjusting so that the roof functions better. Either way would be fine.
I mean, it's quite a simple porch. I mean, it really is, the existing. And there's not a whole lot of fuss on this property up at the cornice or soffits.
I'd just like to add that while I think the porch design that's proposed is kind of a reasonable approach, there's not a lot of support in our guidelines for this kind of change. In Chapter 4, Section D, number 1, it says the original details and shape of porches should be retained, including the outline, roof height, and roof pitch. Number 4 says replace an entire porch only if it is too deteriorated to repair or is completely missing, and designed to match the original as closely as possible. And number 7 says do not remove or radically change entrances and porches, important in defining buildings' overall historic character. And likewise, the Secretary of Interior standards would also has very similar, very stringent kind of recommendations relative to changing the primary entrance of a historic structure. So I'm not convinced that this is necessary. I'm supportive of the addition in the back, but I have a real problem with the porch proposal.
And I would second that. The porch is clearly an important character defining feature of the house. On the main elevation, centered on this elevation, a main decorative feature, and it's historic. I could never vote for destroying a historic character defining feature to replace it with something else.
So before we move too much further, I just want to follow procedure. Are there any comments from the public? Please raise your hand or press *9.
Not seeing any raised hands, Carl.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry about that. I just wanted to make sure I have one job. So
we're in comment mode now?
Well, no. All right, carry on. Sorry.
So I guess I totally agree with Jody and Breck on the porch. But the other thing also, as I go around, fundamentally, I don't have an issue with the addition, but I also don't see much differentiation between the old and the new. And one way I could see bringing some of the house's original character back would be actually to go to hardy shingles, hardy shakes on the existing building. so that you at least have some textural differences between the old and the new, and also harken back to what the house was clad in originally, shingles. And then, you know, if anything's done to the porch, then it's really got to be a secondary addition to the porch, not something that subsumes it the way it currently is. And then I did have one final question. The dormers have on the back of the house have very thin walls. Is that really as they're going to be, or just a schematic? Do you know what I mean, Garrett? If you go to page, wait, where am I? Looking at the side elevation or the rear elevation,
Sure.
the dormer walls seem awfully thin.
Well, intent is to go ahead and flat frame those and then make that a, 5/4 by 4. So the idea is to go ahead and keep those as thin as possible.
So they're resembling the Queen Anne dormer in the front as far as its window to wall relationship.
Well,
the front dormer has very thin walls. I was just curious.
Sure, but we weren't repeating. There's kind of a diamond shaped pattern on those existing windows, which we were not carrying.
No, I get that. I was just more thinking about the thinness of the wall relative to the glass, to the sash.
That is the intent, yes.
Yeah, okay.
And you'll be okay getting a building permit that way with the, how is that gonna be insulated?
Rigid insulation.
Okay. Okay.
We're not concerned about that. We're concerned about. It's like we're not concerned about it not being.
It still will outperform glass.
Make it work. Okay.
Right.
I just want to, because we've been, and I agree with Tim on this, because it's we've had a couple projects where we see very thin, historic looking roof lines, and when stuff gets built, it appears much chunkier. So if you're assuring us that it's going to look like this, that's great. And just want to make sure that we don't get any surprises later, because it's really unfortunate when that does happen. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Absolutely, and we've done this on prior projects that exist. So in the city. So.
All right.
This is Eric. I take it I can't be on that. Is there a way to put me on camera? I have a picture. I was going to say just about the siding issue. I have a picture. I wish I had it on this computer so I could share it with everybody. It's from Coy Barefoot's corner book. It's a coffee table book, and it shows the house.
Yeah. He's the applicant.
Yeah, no, you can. I think you can email the picture to Robert.
Well, it would be nice to allow the applicant. He saw the application. It would be nice to have the applicant promoted and for us to be able to interact with them.
Yeah,
I think that's a correct way.
Sure.
To be clear, the shingles were reported in a 1983 survey, but with the note that it was believed that the house had originally been clapboard. So it was a sort of an odd, pointing out that this is the only house in the district with shingles, and then proceeding to say, but we don't think that's what was originally here. So
yeah, the notation actually says cover underneath believed to be weatherboard.
Yeah, and I think that, well, as we now know, that proved to be true with a renovation shortly after that survey.
I realized I was muted, and I don't think this is picking up the full resolution of it, but it's a very high resolution picture for its era, and it clearly shows it as clapboard siding, and I can share that with Garrett. Garrett, you may even already have it somewhere amongst the things I sent you at the start of this stuff, and it can come back with it. It does also show. There's a nice little detail. It shows a little railing on top of that porch roof, so who knows what changed over time.
So
is it? Sorry, looking at that.
What year was that? What year is the
I
photo?
believe, the picture is, I think, in around 1921 or something like that. I'd have to go. It's referenced in the book. I just have I managed to get a digital version from the one of the university groups that was the source, and it's a pretty impressive little picture of University Circle and everything there.
Is it looking at that photo on the south side? Was there an open porch that then later got enclosed?
Yep. Yeah, there's an open porch and the part that's underneath it was enclosed as well. And that one you might be able to see on here is, you can see the open porch. It's
Yeah.
got a lot of glare from my window, sorry, there.
Yeah, I mean, I think since this is a preliminary discussion, we'll be seeing this again. I think it'd be awesome to include that photograph in the presentation materials so we can reference it. And I guess other couple thoughts. As you're developing your drawings, we would need to see a drawing that shows everything that you would plan to remove. So I think there's, on the rear elevation of the house, there looks like there's sort of a stair tower and a bump out that I don't know if that was original to the house or a later added bathroom or something. So we'd want to see that as clearly shown in the demo plan. And I think also the chimneys, it looks like, looking at the photos, there's maybe 2 chimneys currently existing in the house. And there's one that sort of shows up on some of the drawings, but it's not on all of them. And just for clarity's sake, it'd be good to have that, just to give you all some feedback. And I did kind of like Tim's idea of dissimilar materials, maybe for the original portion of the house and the rear addition, but if we feel like the original was clapboard siding based on the historic photos and whatnot.
Yes, maybe the shingles are on the back.
Right. But then it also looked like there were some pretty strong vertical corner boards in that historic photo, which not sure if maybe they do exist.
So there was, that came up in the 2014 discussion. There's a lot of work done on remove all masonite siding, corner boards, retain historic corners, base.
Right.
Yeah, not really clear.
I mean, my concern right now is it's just not enough differentiation between old and new.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like the only differentiation is you've got a different exposure on your siding. But then it sounds like you've just told us that you're going to replace the siding on the original house as well. So are you gonna, does that mean everything's gonna be the same exposure or?
No, we would differentiate between the exposures. Definitely keeping the smaller on the historic portion of the house, and then going with a wider on the new addition.
Yeah, I mean, in the past, we've been somewhat, our guidelines say don't use the same roof line or eave line, don't, you do step back the massing. And we've been a little bit lenient on some of those things, but I do think that this one is, it's so subtle what the difference is. That I don't know if you can think of some other methods to maybe find some differentiation.
Well, that's what I was wondering about shingles, and maybe even do away with the corner boards, wrap the corner or something that just makes it distinct relative to the clapboard house.
I'm a little worried about, I mean, it looks like you're using the artisan siding. Did I read that right?
That was the intent.
So that, which I know is a better product than the standard James Hardy stuff, but I don't know, Tim, when you said use the James Hardy fiber cement shingles, kind of cringed a little.
Well, I was just trying to, I mean, mostly just trying to think about shingles and how you would, from a maintenance standpoint. I mean, obviously you used to have wood siding, but I'm just trying to think of a way to differentiate the old and the new a bit more, because it is a substantial addition. And I think, the house on Hard Bargain, I think that there really wasn't enough differentiation there. They painted it all gray, and all the siding is exactly the same size. And so it just kind of ballooned the house, kind of lost the sense of scale of the original house. That's always the danger when it's, when you're carrying a whole lot of the same stylistic cues all the way around.
I mean, you could also consider a different roofing material for the original versus the addition.
I mean, if the boarding is significantly different, I mean, that, you know, like if it's 4-inch on the old house, Garrett, what are you thinking on the new part for the
He's gonna
weather?
use they have a, Artisan has a 7¼ inch reveal with their 8-inch boards. So
And then what do you have on the old house?
I think it's 4.5.
Uh-huh.
I would definitely, I can definitely double check and confirm that, but it is significantly narrower.
And the house has, does it have gutters or are they internal? It's hard to tell from the photographs.
Looks like gutters.
Okay.
It should have gutters. They may have disappeared from time to time in its history, but normally it would be there.
Okay. And the intention is, I guess when this comes back, it would be good to see the gutters on the elevations.
Is there I mean, our intent here was really to tie into that roof line and the eave line coming around, and so therefore continuing kind of that gutter profile that's coming around on the existing into the new. Is there a concern about doing that we should have a greater differentiation there?
And someone else correct me if I'm wrong, but I think personally I'm okay if you use the same roof line. But I think you need to find something that differentiates this more, and maybe that is breaking the roof line, or maybe that's some other tactic.
Okay.
But I think you need to find something that does a little bit more.
I mean, the breaking the roof line always, in a case like this, seems sort of forced. So to my mind, it's more about either doing something with the materials instead, because I think it gets forced with a house like, I mean, you drop the eave like a foot and it's like, why'd you do that? I guess, I don't know. Either that or you bring it right down to the windows and make it truly different. But internally, it makes sense to have the eaves at the same height. Jody, what's your thinking on this? You're being very quiet.
Me?
Jody.
Oh, Jody. I was going to say, not me.
No, I was saying Jody.
It appears that the addition is set back from the corners of the historic house, a couple of feet. So unfortunately, the elevational drawing, if it was shaded or showed the shadowed line, that would help a lot in indicating that it is distinct from one block is distinct from the other. But such things as I personally don't mind seeing the eave lower. I think that does help with the differentiation between the two parts. But the other options you all pointed out, different siding materials, different roofing materials, they're all fine. They're all acceptable. As you can tell, I haven't given the addition a lot of great deep thought.
Well, it is on the back of the building.
Exactly.
Okay, the porch is more critical.
Yeah. Well, maybe we get that out of the way. Is there anybody who would be supportive of replacing the porch and building it back larger?
I probably would be. If the profile of the porch remained the same, I think the renderings are completely different porch. The entablature is fussier than what's there. The 1984 nomination notes that the columns are attenuated Doric. They seem to have some sort of detail on the top, but they are much plainer and thinner than what's proposed here. The railings also here, to me, are not reflective of the existing historic building. I'd love to see a lattice in lieu of these, but that's probably picking too much up from the casement windows. But they are a defining feature of the that facade of the house. But I just wonder if something else could be done with the railing so it just looks less chunky, for lack of a better architectural term.
Well, they could go to the historic photograph that Mr. Edwardson showed and take a look at that railing and replicate it.
Yeah.
I can do it with a less historic photograph where I blocked out myself and Rob Winstead to show tops of columns there.
But Rob Winstead would add scale.
Yeah. No, I know. Garrett knows. He's involved in opining on all of this stuff.
I mean, I think if you could have the original porch and add wings to it, they just have to be stepped back slightly. Does that not work? I just don't think you can take off the original porch.
I'm sure we're flex. Garrett and I can work something out there. There's nothing set in stone about how that porch would work.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Chair, I would not be able to vote for removing that porch.
Okay. I'm kind of in agreement with you, James. I think we have precedent where we've denied far smaller expansions of porches.
Mm-hmm. But are you guys, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, so with that feedback, I guess ultimately, could we do a deferral on that front porch and come back with, again, something more sensitive to that historic photo or the setback portions? Would that be an option?
Yeah, I mean, we could, when you come back with the full COA, you could present a different idea. And I mean, if we had to break up the approval and, we could vote to approve the rear addition and defer you on the front porch. I mean, we could do it that way. So yeah, if you still want to keep trying to find a solution for the front porch, please do include that in your next submittal. But okay. it might get broken out of our approval, or assuming we're going to approve the addition when it comes back, it might get broken out of that, or it might make it. You might convince us all.
Okay.
Any further?
I could see putting a porch off where the side porch used to be, or playing with that, and even and going up. I mean, I'm not sure what your setbacks are on the side there, but that's even on the south side of the house.
I think that porch is there. It's just been enclosed.
Right. But you could even add some. I mean, I'm assuming they want the space and not have it as a porch. But I mean, if you restored that as a porch, or if that was the idea, was having some sort of outside deck space. I mean, over there it seems more appropriate to either modify that somewhat rather than the old porch on the front of the house.
Okay.
Just a thought, anyway.
Sure.
What's your? Oh, sorry.
I wondered what the fellow members of the bar think about the existing railing. I mean, there is a platform. The porch it stretches the entire width of the front facade of the house. What is proposed is covering up the two first-story windows and adding, demolishing the existing and thereby extending it. But it looks like the porch actually exists. Is that right, Mr. Edwardson? I mean, there is something that you can stand on each side of the front windows.
Yeah, it's what I think Jeff had mentioned at the beginning is, it's a pressure treated deck style.
Sure.
Wings off of it. They actually kind of jut out slightly from the line of the the old porch, maybe now that I hear everybody talking, because that made it different, that it was in fact, distinguishing it from the historical portions of it. But
I think it's very clearly, it's obvious it's a later addition.
Right. We'd want to give the applicant some guidance if the majority of the board is not in favor of extending the porch covering, what are we looking for? What would be acceptable is what I'm trying to ask. Or do you want the existing railings to stay there? I'm guessing the answer is no. So
I'd rather see that deck disappear and go back to the porch.
Yeah, that's the.
Which is why I was suggesting doing something with the south end of the building there where it used to be a porch.
Or even on your, you're creating an L with the addition between the former porch and your addition. Could you fill that in? Maybe cover up another parking space with a porch off the side of the addition?
Potentially, and certainly with this, feedback, we could review with the owners and see, if that kind of meets their needs as well.
So I think, I think it was mentioned, but some of the stuff that hopefully you can bring back to us would be, an existing elevation and plan of, what is being removed or demolished. If you could provide an existing site plan that shows any demo on the site. I don't know if you're losing any trees or anything. That would be important for us to look at.
Sure.
And hopefully, do you have any questions about some of the feedback you've gotten from us?
No. I mean, I think this was all constructive and appreciated. And obviously our key takeaway being that differentiation between the existing and the new, and coming up with an option that we think is successful for you to take a look at. So we'll key in on that for our submittal then. But our understanding is ultimately the massing that's being shown and that layout is successful. It's just more of a question of differentiating between the historic and the new.
Yep.
Also, if you have any exterior lighting planned, which I assume you're going to for the parking area, we definitely want to see that.
Okay.
And I know any window replacements or repair requires quite a bit of documentation, and that should be something you should just double check with Jeff on.
Sure. Well, so if this meets our, I guess this meets our preliminary discussion then. But at this time, if we could kind of defer I guess a ruling from the board and come back with that full package, we would appreciate it.
I actually don't think we even need to make a motion.
Okay.
Yeah, you're good to come back.
Yeah, there's nothing to defer, right? Isn't it preliminary? There's no deferring necessary.
Yeah, because an application was accepted, it'd be best to, I mean, it was turned in and
Okay, we can do that.
So it'd be wise to accept the applicant's request for deferral. And that means they come back when they choose to versus a PAR deferral. But that way, at least an action has been taken.
All right, so we don't get in trouble. I move to accept the applicant's request for deferral.
second,
Okay, I'll do as quick as I can. Mr. Schwartz.
Yes.
Mr. Beamer.
Aye.
Mr. Gastinger.
Aye.
Mr. McClure.
Aye.
Ms. Lewis.
aye.
Mr. Lehendro.
Aye.
Mr. Moore.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Thank you. The vote is unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
So moving on to the next application, I'm going to go ahead and promote Kurt, who's the applicant representing the next project.
Y'all don't realize that Carl and I actually do get in trouble. We had to stand in the corner after the last meeting for an hour. So it's they're on top of us at City Hall. So
Socially distant, standing in the corner.
you know, it's like,
You take this on Zoom.
Were you in separate corners? I know.
you know, I joked earlier to a note to Carl and Jody. I said, someone told me you have to keep your eyes closed in closed session, but I think Sherry's just messing with me. And then after I said, oh my gosh, I wonder if they think she told me that. And but the so if you enjoyed the sort of some confusion on the last one, you'll truly enjoy this one.
Great.
Yeah, and so it's and I can ask a question at the end of the meeting just about, you know, when we get sort of these multi-phase projects and what's what. But this is a COA request for 485 14th Street Northwest, which is in the Rugby Road, University Circle, Venable ADC district. This request, as I'm presenting it, is for phase one. And as you saw in the drawings, the formal submittal kind of merged all the phases together. So we later attached some of the initial documents the architect had shared with me when we were discussing it, so to make clear, you know, what is phase one, phase two, and phase three. So so if there's any question about which drawings we're looking at, you know, let's take the moment and make sure we're on the same page. So phase one is some actually a lot of maintenance and repair on the house. Typically not something BAR would review, but it's associated with some other things going on here. So it's all in this as one package. But you know, just so it's clear that you know, repairing the built-in gutters would, you know, in and of itself would not require a COA. The second phase involves a small addition at the rear. And the third phase would be a further extension of that. And very similar to, in fact, it's the same firm that did the project. And sorry, all my address is in 513 14th Street, which was reviewed a couple of years ago. So this first discussion is on phase one. And then when we complete this, then we will have a preliminary discussion on phases 2 and 3. And so we have a house built in the 1920s. It is contributing to the district. There is a garage in the rear that is, however, non-contributing, and the plan is to remove that, but that does not require any BAR review. There are some trees in the yard that will be removed, and the architects have proposed planting some additional trees along that. I think it's the Gordon Avenue street side, sort of to fill in for what, you know, later might get removed when they build the addition, if they build the addition. The primary issue with phase one is the repair and or replacement of the windows. The owner was to have a qualified window restorer that was going to review the windows and make a recommendation and present those findings, which we don't have. And as you know, we typically require, in order to allow window replacements, the bar is relatively high in proving why they need to be replaced. The other piece is the repairs to the front porch. And the only thing there that I added into the staff report is that the existing railing just looks like something somebody built on a sun deck, clearly not original. And so looking at some other houses on 14th Street, it does seem to be a relatively typical design. It's square pickets and square stock on the bottom rail. So it really is the profile for that, the top rail. and that I don't know the condition of the posts, the columns. A lot of times the columns are fine, but maybe the base is deteriorated. But I think making clear that the columns and the profiles, the ceiling, it's a simple cornice, but that would be retained, and that the railing would be reconstructed in something appropriate. And that, so a bit of a difficulty with the windows, because said it's not, the case has not been made for replacement, but I wanted to put the ball in your court to have that discussion, and whether or not there are things you can address relative to the stairs and the porch. You can discuss those, and certainly the site work if there's any other questions. So with that, any questions for me? Okay, and then I think Kurt maybe on the line. I don't know who.
Yeah,
I am. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we can hear you. If you want me to go to a specific page, I can for you.
Let's just stay here for now. First of all, thank you. And this is a repair project, and I wanted to sort of just introduce quickly why we're doing this in phases. I didn't want there to be any hidden agenda pieces of this. We started out with the house, and this is the phase one piece that just is general repair of a nice but slightly deteriorating house. The back piece of the house, which is the rear stair, you can see it in the lower left photograph. It's not in good shape right now, and our intention would be to rebuild that probably right away. If we're looking, I mean, part of this is driven by a desire to have this house repaired and ready for rental in the fall, and we're a little concerned about timing relative to getting it ready. The back piece is not in good shape, but it's serviceable, and we would propose, if we don't take it off as part of a phase two approval, we would paint it and get it into structurally reasonable shape so that the house can be rented in the fall. I thought that Jeff's suggestions on the porch were fine, and we don't have any problem at all in replicating the railings and so forth. We did not proceed to kind of take apart the porch because there's enough loose stuff. I crawled under it, and it's in one of those states where I think once you started to take it apart, you wouldn't know what you got into, and we figured we would just leave that for later once we got into it, but didn't want to start a demolition on the thing before we talked with the BAR and gotten your blessing on what we were going to do. And what we're basically going to do is replace it and restore it as it is right now. Jeff had suggested that we use the beadboard ceiling, and that's fine. We'll replace the columns. One or two of them are probably serviceable. The other ones may need to be replicated, and we would propose to do that as they are. The porch deck is a tongue and groove wood, and we will do our best to replace that. It probably is going to have to come apart completely because it's pretty well badly rotted out. You can see that the lattice on the bottom is damaged in a great number of places, and part of that is due to a lot of vegetation that's crawled into the edges and pieces, and we're going to strip that back and get rid of the pieces of landscaping that are contributing to the deterioration of the porch. So that's kind of a summary on the porch. We're happy to consider any suggestions the BAR may have on that, but basically our goal is to put it back as it was according to the Secretary's standards and make that happen. I will apologize to the BAR for not having the window thing resolved. As you probably know, it's been hard to find somebody who can come and take a look at the windows who's actually qualified to determine if they can be repaired or replaced or restored. And my proposal is that we would get that report done and submit it to staff for approval. Going through, I know that's a sensitive issue, and we don't have any objections to and are in favor of the restoring the windows as they are. But there's a lot of windows, and some are in okay shape and some are in really bad shape, and we just need to get you the report on what that is as Jeff has suggested. So that that and the landscaping a lot of the trees that you see are just really junk and need to be taken out. We propose to replant where needed according to the city standards, and we'll do that as part of the first phase. And so the first phase would allow us, hopefully with your approval, to get the house put back together again and do the interior work. We have a parallel construction permit set in at the city for the interior work. So just so you know that's going on as well. Not doing a lot, just really kind of cleaning it up and fixing electrical and some other things that need to be dealt with on the inside of the house. I will mention just quickly, Jeff and I talked about the gutters. It has existing Philadelphia gutters. It's my belief that they were probably reworked maybe 5 or 10 years ago. They were a pretty quality job at the time. There's some welded seams that need to be re-tinned and glued back together, but all in all, they're not in bad shape at all. You'll notice that there's some fascia rot that would be repaired. We would put the fascia and soffits and so forth back as they are now. They're pretty simple profiles. They're just basically flats all the way around the house. So not much to do there, except where we've got gutters that have, fallen apart underneath the Philadelphia gutters that would be restored and repaired. I think that's really pretty much it. This is phase one that we're looking for approval today is really just a repair job. And I don't think we're proposing anything radical, and happy to address any questions that you might have on this part of it. So.
Well, thank you. So just for procedure's sake, are there any questions from the public? Please raise your hand or press *9.
Carl, I don't see any raised hands.
Okay. All right, questions from the board. I have a question. So for the, if you were to replace the windows, I see you've got a, sorry, now I'm trying to find it. There was a window picked out and it had a jam profile that matched the brick mold on the existing windows. So is the intention to remove the existing brick mold as well as the window?
Yes, a lot of those are rotted out as well. And I'll just add to your question. We had gone through a very extensive exercise on the renovation of the house down the road with the BAR, and we finally arrived at a brick mold window assembly that was virtually identical to what was there earlier that the BAR had approved, and are proposing effectively the same design and window for this one, except that these windows are 1/1 and don't have any divided lights. So, obviously under the Secretary standards, if we can restore, or save pieces of it that work and are consistent with the replaced windows, we'll do that. But when we get into them, there may be rotted pieces or other chunks that need to be dealt with. So,
okay. Well, I guess we'll get that inventory when
we will include that. We'll include that in our report to you on all of those components of the entire window assembly.
Usually, it's a little easier to approve the replacement of a window sash than the whole,
right.
Everything, the brick mold, all of it.
The only reason I'm hesitant to do that is just because I don't know what we're going to get into once we start taking these things apart. So,
okay.
Kurt, what's the plan with the assuming windows restorable? What's the plan with the metal storms?
They would go away.
That I figured to say that, but I just thought I'd ask.
Yeah, no, they're not an attractive feature of the house, and
no.
In support of the idea of replacing the windows, we would have the opportunity to put in, insulating glass and new systems, which would be a little bit better from a thermal performance standpoint. But it's sort of a balance between respecting the standards of the Secretary's standards and doing a good job on the rest of it. So I think that's really the purpose of the report that we'll get into in some detail to try to figure that out.
Yep.
Really nitpicky little question. I'm looking at your existing and proposed landscape plans, because I guess the trees are part of this phase one. On the new plan, you have on the back corner a 18-inch black locust to remain. that doesn't show up on the existing plan. Was that a mistake?
And Robert, can we go to that sheet? I'm just trying to remember what we had there.
It looks like it might have been one of the demo trees that accidentally got moved in cab.
I think that's right. Which are the one we're looking at?
So that's on the existing, well, yeah, there you go. That one on the back corner by the parking lot. Is that tree there?
Yeah, that tree is there and it'll stay.
Okay, if you go to the existing plan, so up one page.
Yeah, that's a good catch. I'm sorry we missed that one.
So there actually is a tree there and that'll remain, or it's, because the
Well,
one that's there is being marked for demolition.
You're correct. In the phase 3 work, it would be demolished, and we can talk about that next. It's a nice tree. It's one of the few trees that actually has any redeeming value. Unfortunately, it doesn't fit with the development plan that works in the fully developed phase, but we would put other trees in to fill in that part. So, but yes, that's correct. I'm sorry we made that mistake. I didn't catch that.
Just wanted to make sure. So we're getting 3 new tulip poplars along the street.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Which that's great. That's nice. Just want to make sure.
All right. And Jeff, I don't know if you want to go on and look at the phase 2 and phase 3 work as part of this before we go any further or any questions. I'm happy to keep going if you want to, or we can stop here, whatever you choose.
Well, for the rest of the board, what's less confusing for you guys? Do you want to act on each phase? Do you want to look at the whole thing?
Act on this phase.
Okay.
Wait, just so I'm clear, why are we only voting on phase 1 right now? And thank you, Kurt, for your transparency and directness. But why are we holding off on voting on phases 2 and 3? Is it because you need to see what happens in phase 1 first before you move on, or?
No, it was really from a timing standpoint. We have to move on our construction in order to make our deadline, and we didn't want to deceive the board, and we also didn't want to delay what we needed to do to meet our deadline for the development side of it. So, and when we talked to Jeff, we had a debate about whether we should disclose the whole thing. Having been the chairman of the board for a long time, I decided that I thought it would be better if we just showed you what we were doing completely, and we could address that.
And it covers the preliminary discussion as well. Just
right.
So I figured you get it all here and see what fits, doesn't fit, get some feeling for it. And it's said there's a lot of stuff they can do that's maintenance in phase 1 that doesn't require the BAR's
right
approval. So you may want to, if there are issues with the windows, you may want to parse down so that it's clear, what can be done or not. But I would suggest wrapping up where you stand on this phase, and then we can dive to the next 2, because they're going to be similar to sort of the addition discussion like we had on Chancellor Street.
And I have a question then, if we're still on phase 1. In the application, it indicates that repairs to the porch will be made to those elements that are severely damaged. They're going to be replaced with synthetic materials. And I'd certainly like to know more about, does that include Dutchman? And what kind of is there a drawing surveying the damage to the front porch that's going to be repaired? If not, could I have a better description of things like the columns? How much of the columns are damaged? How much is going to be repaired?
We do not have that information at this time, because honestly, we went up on a ladder and looked at it and tried to figure out what was what. But as you well know, until you actually take the thing apart and see what's in it and how it's put together and what its status is, it's very hard to know that. What I will say is that
so your alternative is just to tell a carpenter go at it, and
no, not at all. No, I'm sorry if there was confusion about that.
It would be nice to know what's damaged before you start repairing it.
Well, I will just make a suggestion to the board. What we have done in the past on situations like this where we have, sort of difficulty in figuring out what's what, is to do a little bit of exploratory surgery, prepare a report for the board and have it reviewed by staff or a couple of members of the board to make sure that we're on track with what the standards would be. From my standpoint as an architect, this is pretty straightforward in that, the standards are very clear. Secretary standards are very clear about how we use materials and how they would work. But I'm open to any suggestions that you would like us to follow relative to addressing those concerns.
Well, my memory of the Secretary standards is that you don't do Dutchman or replace historic wooden elements with synthetic material.
I think that that's generally the case. And the only places that we would use synthetic materials is if we had, well, I guess it's subtle. There are a lot of different variants, as you know, about how you do that or what they look like or so forth. And we've had a lot of discussions over the years on a number of projects about at what point do you shift to modern materials that don't require painting and maintenance, and if they look identical to what you started out with, are they okay or not? I mean, there's just a lot of scenarios which develop out of that, and I don't know that anybody's ever gotten to complete clarity on what the right direction of that is. Clearly, we're aware of the standards, and we would follow the Secretary's standards on materials as much as we could.
Yeah, I don't know what advantage it gets you if you have, for instance, a number of balusters, 20, and 5 of them need to be replaced. So you do those in AZEC, but you keep the other wooden 15 balusters. I don't know what advantage there is in that. So you don't paint those 5 as often?
No, I mean, I guess there's a common sense practicality piece of this. My normal suggestion would be is if we can replace historic materials with things that look identical to the historic materials in every way, shape, or form, that's a reasonable outcome from an economic and an historic preservation standpoint. I'll give you an example of that, not that I want to get off track, but on the Gordon Avenue building the bridges down right up on the street on Gordon Avenue, we had very difficult construction problems relative to face brick applique with the setback numbers. And we actually used a very thin set brick on a metal backing that was indistinguishable from actual brick. And we put up a test panel, the BAR looked at it and approved it. And I don't know to this date that anybody's known different about the fact that it was a fairly sophisticated piece of work to achieve a look and a feel that's indistinguishable from real brick.
I'm glad it wasn't on the BAR at that time.
Yeah, I know. And I guess I'm not trying to argue with you. I'm just trying to seek clarification. If you can suggest a pathway to resolve these things, I'm happy to consider it. And we want to be consistent with the city standards and with the Secretary's guidelines. At the same time, I would appeal for any common sense practicality in this particular case. The railing is not consistent with any of the normal typological forms on other railings. And so I would anticipate that we're going to be replacing the entire railing. I don't think we would want any of the existing balusters or profiles or pieces of those railings probably to be part of the final work. But I'm open to your guidance and thoughts. Anyway.
I'd like to know what specifically is being requested and for the applicant to do the research and make the design decisions and in consultation with the guidelines and the Secretary standards and come to us with what they're proposing.
Okay.
Are we still on questions, Carl? Okay. So, I mean, this kind of goes in step with the comments Jody had, the questions Jody had. And it's really seeking clarity because when I look at sheet A101, which is phase 1, and it says phase 1 work scope, and then the bullet points specifically say, some of them anyway, new replacement windows throughout, removal of front porch and front steps decking surface, replaced with 5/4 treated decking or Trex decking, repairs to front porch floor joists, ceiling joists, roof rafters to restore pre-damaged state. I mean, that one I'm okay with. But, you know, the letter at the front of the application talks about trying to make repairs where possible, but then the notes in the scope of work on the architectural sheet just say full-scale replacement. So I think there's a discrepancy between the description and then what's in the drawings, and that's making it difficult for me to know what we're approving.
Okay.
Is that fair?
I understand I understand the problem.
I think
And I
similarly, the
do
windows
think-
are all marked for replacement.
Right, the sheet before, they're all dashed out, you know, or two sheets before maybe, D101, you know, remove
I
window,
think
remove window.
the intent of those indications was that we were going to deal with them one way or the other, but you're correct in the notation. So
Yeah, so I think it for me, it does come back to Jody's recommendation of maybe a more thorough survey, you know, to document existing conditions and really understand what can be repaired, which obviously is our preference, versus what, you know, is so far gone that it may need replacement.
sure. I have a question for the board then. What we didn't want to do was to begin a disassembly exercise in order to determine what was workable and what wasn't, and get ourselves in trouble with the board from proceeding with a construction project that wasn't authorized or approved. And you know, what I'm open to whatever process you suggest is the optimum one, but I want to full disclosure. We're trying to follow the rules here and do something that makes sense. So guidance would be appreciated.
So the applicant, and Jeff, please correct me if I'm wrong, but if they're going to basically replace what's there in kind, that's considered maintenance, and that's something that is not under our purview. Is that correct? So the rule, what we need to do in our motion is decide how much of this replacement can be done with alternative materials. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, you know, and it's sort of I mean, there's a lot of stuff where I will communicate with people, and I mean, even on my own house, you know, I'm maintaining and, you know, I'm repairing and I'm doing what I have to do to make that repair. We don't, we're not out on a job site every day, you know, seeing what's used in those repairs, or, so there is I guess, a level of trust in that.
So
yeah,
if he was to use all wood to match what's existing to do, you know, any patching and repair, and if no profiles changed, if it was all just put back the way it was, that's something that he could do without an application, correct?
yes, and I think you know, but given that the porch railing no longer exists, that's where you know, it would be, let's just say this were only the porch. I could probably work with an applicant and say, this is, you know, what we want to have happen. If it, so, but the fact that it's all together, we're going to look at it all together. So
Right.
Yeah, so the railing, I think, you know, so we say match in kind, and I, you know, get a photograph and, you know, but you're correct.
And you've offered some pictures of neighboring porches that were built about the same time, and we could put in our motion, the railing should match the more historic railings, and you know, we could. So I think we can find a way to craft a motion to make this whole thing work, at least for phase one. I'm hoping.
I will add one piece. Maybe this will be helpful. We are actually also the contractors for the project. We're licensed Class A contractors, so there's not going to be some third party running around doing this randomly on the project. So if that helps at all. Also.
And I also think that to answer your question about how do you answer some of these questions without going too far, it is common practice to do architectural probes to determine the amount of deterioration.
Right. I guess what I'm looking is there a no, and I understand that I'm not trying to be an idiot here about what we do as architects.
I was not implying that.
No, I understand. I'm just more joking than anything else.
Okay.
you know as well that if you take a column apart, or to try to figure out what of it's good and not, you don't really know that until you get into the inside of it and see how it's really put together. And sometimes I've had the experience that you start and you don't know where to end, basically, as you start taking things apart, because they're not suitable or structural or reasonable or safe to deal with. And there are parts of this porch that have those attributes, I would say, as an architect, that worried me about how far we go and where we start to do it. It was simply drilling a hole into it and saying, yeah, it looks fine. That would be one thing. If I'm dealing with the whole top of a capital of a column that's gone or screwed up or rotted into the middle or good on the outside but rotted on the inside, I'm not going to know that until I take that apart. And my suggestion or my plea would be that the standard be that we discover that, put it back. We could almost do sort of a HABs review of it, where we take a picture of the profile, we document the profile, and we agree to put it back together again in a way that you can't tell that it was repaired. That would be the reasonable standard, I think, of how you do that. But I will defer to your judgment on where that line is. And I don't want to miss the fact that we're trying to do this without spending $1 million. It's a repair job, not a complete rebuild of the house, actually. So anyway.
Are there any more questions, or maybe we just need to head into comments? All right. If there are any comments from the public, please raise your hand or press star 9. Not much public. All right. So yeah, board. Any comments? I'm going to start by saying I think I'd like to be able to see if we can craft a motion that says, what the line is between when replacements need to be in the same material or where a synthetic material can be used. Or we can just flat out say it all must go back as wood, in which case I think Kurt can proceed, at least on the porch, almost at will. But are there any thoughts on I guess, the main construction on this is the little stair piece on the back. And then we have some site issues. And then we have the details about the porch.
Mr. Chair, I'm willing to start the discussion by making a motion. And staff has given us some guidance with regard to the porch, which I'll include. And I'll just let other colleagues work with that and accept friendly amendments if I need to. So having considered the standards set forth within the city code, including the ADC district design guidelines, I move to find that the proposed window repairs and replacements, porch repairs, and landscaping at 435 14th Street satisfy the BAR's criteria and are compatible with the property and other properties in the Rugby Road, University Circle, Venable ADC district, and that the BAR approves the application with the following conditions. That we recommend that any new element should match the existing, including but not limited to beaded ceiling boards, no faux panels, painted wood tongue and groove flooring, no imitation material on the flooring, columns round and engaged, simple cornice at the entablature. And I'll stop there. I would say that we never discussed the handrail, and which I don't believe that to be original nor very safe, the one on the front porch. So we may want to have a discussion on that, but that's my motion.
Tim?
One thing, it should say phase 1, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's all that's been submitted for a COA, I think, tonight.
Right. I just think we ought to put that in the motion.
Yeah,
Not a
so
big deal, but just to be
change my
clear.
motion. Yeah, to approve the submitted phase 1.
Yep.
From the applicant only.
Yep. Yep.
So I would like to take staff's recommendation about the railing to use the neighboring railings as an example to base the new ones off of.
I'll accept that as a friendly amendment.
Okay. Is there a? You said handrail. I'm thinking what comes down on the side of the stairs. I don't know.
That's what I was talking about. The handrail.
All right.
They're not to code. They're not anything.
I might suggest that we will propose a design to staff consistent with the codes and the new rail to be proposed for your approval or for staff approval or something like that.
Staff approval means it's going to come back to us, unfortunately.
Okay.
If you could describe what you're thinking at this point, and I know that's asking you to design on the fly.
I can give that a shot. I think that the historic railing would be an extension of the porch railing profiles and pickets and so forth that would just simply come down as defined by the Charlottesville Building Code guidelines, and leave it at that, and we'll just match it.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say
that's something staff can approve, I think.
Yeah.
Sorry.
If I could just add something, just so we're clear, I looked in some of the millwork catalog to see if there's anybody's got a profile that's matches or similar, and I didn't really find anything. So that's why I stuck with similar. I think something that just has some mass to it. That's if you want to make that clarification. So I used the word similar intentionally, if that's helpful.
I'm also to make an architect's gentleman's promise that we'll do it the right way, if that matters. So
I'm going to amend my motion to state that the railing going down from the porch down on each side of the stairs will match these existing porch railing with the same spacing and size pickets on the railing.
No, we're not trying to match the existing. What was suggested was matching some of the neighboring as recommended by staff.
But the neighboring ones don't have railings going down the steps. They only have one or two, unless I'm missing them. James, draw my attention.
I guess my point is that I think I would say something like the handrails going down the steps would match the new replacement railing that is stylistically similar to.
Got it. Okay. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes. And similar to the other properties on 14th Street that have been called out by staff.
Right.
So how do we deal with what's fundamentally exploratory demolition in terms of what gets repaired and what gets replaced as far as the porch?
Okay.
I guess I would say the way that it was worded, which does come from some of the staff's recommendations that specifically says no imitation material, starts to address my concerns. I don't know, Jody, if you agree or not, but that seems to me to imply that Dutchman would be made with in-kind materials, namely wood. And then my next question though would be, would we require this new railing and handrail to be made of wood, or would imitation materials there be acceptable?
So if I could clarify that, so I know, you can go to Lowe's and buy a masonite board that's a simulated tongue and groove. That's what I would mean by artificial. But I also know that we've approved a composite material for railings in the past. So sort of that distinction of, I don't want to belittle any individual product here, but something that's not, pressed masonite, I would consider the faux material made of plastic. But the composite railings that we've looked at, that would not fall in my category. Faux.
I would say that whatever material gets used needs to be painted. If it's a material that does not require painting, such as a vinyl railing, I would not be willing to accept that.
Yeah, I will, maybe I can add to that. We've looked at both AZEC and Versatech materials, which are, high density, white. They don't require painting, although they can be painted. I think we would leave the railings white anyway, probably because they match the architectural typology of what those porches were about. And they can be made and they can be profiled and routed to match a profile of a historic railing in a way that's indistinguishable from a high quality wood railing. So, maybe to be more specific, if that would be acceptable, that would be preferred, I think, just from a maintenance and durability standpoint.
Sherry, it's your motion. Is that, I'm sorry.
Well, I'd love to hear what other
Okay.
people are thinking about the applicant's suggestion.
I'm okay with AZEC. I do think the material, because you've got nail holes and glue and things like that, sometimes it really does look more realistic, more like wood when it's painted, and hopefully that paint will hold longer than the wood rail would. So it's I know it's a little redundant because it's white already, but it benefits from that extra coating.
And you're well aware that the way that those things can be done are so that the nails and so forth are assembled without joints, so that you can hide those things pretty well usually.
If you can hide, I've just had some bad experiences.
I have too, but I'm always amazed at the ingenuity of the guys that are coming up with these systems for doing it in a way that doesn't look like it's got a nail hole in it or whatever.
Breck, you've been patient.
Yeah, that's right.
I just think the fundamental challenge here is we just don't know exactly what we're approving. So I feel like there's a path forward with approving the approach that is most clear to us and meets our standards, which might be including replacing with in-kind materials. And Mr. Wassenaar could always come back and provide more detail if he chooses to deviate from that or want to deviate from that. Actually, my even larger concern is in my time on the BAR, I don't recall a potential approval of a wholesale window replacement without that window survey. And I just feel like I can't support that.
And we're not proposing that.
Okay, so I'm confused.
But that was in Sherry's motion.
That's in the packet as what is included in phase 1.
So yeah, I think we need to amend the motion to take the windows out of our approval.
I'll accept a friendly amendment to take the windows out of the approval. And to Breck's point, and sort of the sentiment reflected with a lot of people, that the rehabilitation chapter 4 guidelines that we have that address facades and storefronts does say at item 2, conduct exploratory demolition to determine what original fabric remains and its condition. And likewise, as Breck just said, with the windows, prior to any repair or replacement of windows, a survey of the existing conditions is recommended. Note number of windows, whether each window is original, replaced, material type, hardware, finish, condition of the sash, frame, sill putty, and panes. So it would be, I agree, it would be helpful to have a little bit more information. We know there's storm windows there. We just aren't getting a whole lot of information about what's there and what will be replaced.
So I think we still have a motion. Yeah, okay. Okay.
Did I ever get a second?
I'm not, Robert, are you clear on what the motion is? Robert Watkins?
I've been notating everything. I can, it's not very clean. I can read what I have, or, if Sherry would, I don't know, Sherry, if you wanted to just read it again, I'm happy to read what I have.
Yeah, and I, for other board members, I took the approval motion from the report and then added the conditions that staff had added. Sorry, let me get back to that. On page 2 of the staff report, under item 1, proposes repair and rebuilding of the front porch as it now exists. The paragraph that follows that, I had inserted those conditions. And then in addition to that, we removed the windows and please help me, help me.
Did you just mention porch railing, that the porch railing should be replaced?
Yes.
With the other properties on Porch?
Yeah, the porch railing's going to be replaced like neighboring properties with similar pickets.
Yeah, including the porch step railings.
And then also the hand railing on the, well, actually, and the applicant was going to come back with drawings on the hand railing going down the stairs. Did I get everything?
I think the idea was that the handrails were going to be similar to the new railings, and as long as what gets resubmitted matches that, staff I think can approve that.
Okay. I heard the applicant say he would submit them, but that's great. Perfect.
So what about, and then I still think the phase 1 mention is worth putting in there just to make clear this is phase 1. But how about then the applicant comes back with the railing detail, the window report, and the demolition, exploratory demolition report?
I'll accept that friendly amendment.
So if they come back with the exploratory demolition report, I mean, I think the intention is they want to start working and they want to start replacing as they, so what is coming back with the report do? Just say, this is what we replaced and
this is what we're going to have to do to fix it. And then if, I mean, I guess mostly it's trust but verify is what it is. It's we're expecting them to take an honest approach to it, but they need to report back to us this is what they did or are going to do. And if something seems off, Jeff flags it.
But my motion did specify beaded ceiling boards with no faux panels, painted wood tongue and groove flooring, wood, not imitation material, and columns that are round and engaged, and retaining the simple cornice on the entablature of the porch. So I'm not saying that covers all the materials we haven't addressed. I think the applicant wanted AZEK for the railings, and I'll just submit that to other colleagues' consideration.
I mean, given that the railings don't exist, I don't have a problem with them being composite because they're not, it's not a repair, it's really a full-blown replacement. And there's just the added fact that the composites will remain stronger and safer for a much longer time. I mean, the one question I have is like, whenever you have a material that's basically color, what's the word I'm looking for? It's all one color all the way through. Does the surface really read like paint, or does it look like it's been, spray painted or something like that? In other words, one thing that's true of an old house is it's all painted by hand. So you have this sense of the hand and all that, which is why part of the reason, I don't have a problem with composites when they're painted. They seem somewhat suspect when not. But I'm kind of with you on that, Carl. I mean, I think if you paint it, it really does, you can't distinguish it from wood. But if it's a standalone surface, I'm not so sure.
I would think it'd need to be painted so that it could adequately match the columns.
Right, because you would pick up that textural difference if it's not painted.
And they're, otherwise you're matching the paint color of the columns to the railing, because I guarantee you they're not going to be the exact same color.
Right.
But in your same vein of thought, Tim, I would support a composite material for the railings because they are a new railing system. We don't have the original historic railings there.
Right. And they are the item that's most susceptible to deterioration and and failure, and they are a safety factor, and especially the handrail going down the stairs.
Yeah.
You know, that one,
And
it's
then
outside
also because,
completely.
right.
I agree.
May I ask a question quickly about the windows? So are the wind, you know, we would propose to provide the report and with the BAR's agreement, replace or repair what we can replace or repair. And is that something we would need to come back for, or is it, can be that be part of this approval?
I think you can repair any of the windows. If you want to replace them, you need to come back to us.
Okay.
Sherry, does that make sense?
I think that's according to our guidelines, yeah.
Hey, Kurt, I have a question.
Yes.
On the first floor, are the window sizes different? And I should probably just be looking at the drawing, but let's say the window to the left of the door is shot, but is there one around the corner that matches it, or are the ones in the front standalone?
They're pretty much all the same, so that we could move windows around that were restorable to the sides of the building that are seen from the street.
Right. So I mean, I would endorse that as a practice for starters.
Okay. Does that mean that we would be able to use replacement windows that were identical to the other ones on the sides of the building that were not visible from the street?
Well, I think everything is visible from the street according to
Yeah.
our current
Right.
approach. I
Okay.
think at one point the BAR had a different approach, but now
Yeah.
all exterior.
I'm just trying to get clear what we were doing.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just trying to think if you have some unrepairable windows at the ground floor level, my inclination would be to, you know, try to replace the ones and move things around so that anything that was immediately visible from the public street was an old window.
Yeah, we could certainly do that.
I'd like to say we stick with our, if it can be repaired, please repair it. If it needs to be replaced, please bring it back to us.
Right.
I think you're getting into really muddy water with moving stuff around.
Right. Okay.
And hopefully a replacement window is a much less invasive and time-consuming process. So you can, if you come back a month from now, I'm hoping that won't kill your schedule for that.
Yeah, I'm hoping we can even find somebody to do it in the current market, but we'll see.
I will second Sherry's motion.
Okay.
Does
and
Robin know what it is?
I have taken the best notes that I can, and we still have this meeting video for record, but I've done my best.
Well, actually, before you do a roll call, Kurt, you've technically got 3 minutes to respond. Are you okay with what we've been?
I'm okay with where we're going. I mean, our goal is to work with you to get the best result. It's just that simple. So I'm fine with that. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, Robert.
Okay. So with that second, I'll go ahead and call a vote. Mr. Zemer.
Aye.
Mr. Moore.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gastinger.
Aye.
Mr. McClure.
Aye.
Mr. Lehendro, if you can. He was having some problems with his phone. Okay, well, I'll just go ahead. Miss Lewis.
Aye.
And Mr. Schwartz.
Yes.
And Mr. Lehendro. Do you vote to approve the seconded motion? Okay, that was an aye. Thank you. The vote was unanimous in support of the motion.
Thank you.
And now we move on to phase 2 and 3.
Yeah. Well, hopefully this can be less complex since we're coming back on it. So.
And when we're done with this, I need a break.
Yeah.
Okay.
Think about that. So I won't belabor the introduction. You've had that, and this does now we get into the phases 2 and 3, which are the initial hyphen addition, if you will, to the rear, and followed at presumably later date by a larger addition to the rear. And I think that what the applicants are looking for are sort of the same questions of massing, scale, materials. Is this appropriate? Is this something that is has a shot at being approved as a formal submittal? I don't know how far in the future they're anticipating bringing in this. They can address that. So whether we get into the finer grain of materials and details, I'll leave that to them. But this does is serving as a sort of the preliminary discussion of a potential application, but also just a feedback on if this design is going in the right direction. So with that, I will pass it back to Kurt. And
okay, a little bit of background. We, as I mentioned earlier, we were trying to move forward on the renovation of the existing house, and the building will meet code for occupancy in the fall if we're able to do the phase 1 work. So that solves our immediate problem with my owner. That said, we realized that the little piece on the back of the house was not in good shape, didn't really meet the needs of what we were trying to do. And if you go back to the first part, we suggested to our owner that the smart thing to do would be to look at the zoning envelope and really take a look at what the ultimate development of the site would be and present that to the BAR all at one time, so that we effectively had a thoughtful design for the whole project. And this is the time to do that. The project has moved around a little bit where our owner, Eric Trieber and Heidi Trieber, were interested in just doing the phase 2 project. I now believe that there's a high probability we may go ahead and do the whole project at one time, depending on the timing and whether we're able to find people and resources and so forth to even do the work prior to this fall. I don't believe that the phase 3 project could be done until the fall of 2022 under any scenario. So we're looking at I'm just trying to lay it all out there. We're looking at what would likely be a temporary scenario for the rear of the phase 2 project. I'll share with you right off the bat that in looking at the Secretary's guidelines, and we did this on the project down the street that had been approved by the BAR, these little additions that were put on the back were typically done later. They're not architecturally significant, in my opinion. And the key part of the Secretary's standards from our read is that we want to differentiate the existing house from the new parts that are being added. And we've tried to do that so that we actually have a transitioned massing of the pieces that are added, stepping back, respecting the mass of the existing house and so forth. I'm not entirely pleased with the rear elevation of the phase 2 thing, because it's a little bit more modern than any of us would have liked. But in terms of where the stairways and the interior work, it was the best we could do with a kind of bad situation. And my hope is that our client will go ahead and build the phase 3 project right away, and this will never be seen again. That's probably the likely outcome, but I'll just share that with you up front as an architect. If we go down to the phase 3 piece, you'll see that we're trying to keep the roof lines to work together. When you see this, we wanted to do something that was familiar with the front house in terms of massing and windows and so forth. These would have the same 1/1 windows that we would have used on a replacement basis for the front building. But it's pretty straightforward. It's a fabric building. I don't think it needs to distinguish itself as an object at all. We're not going to try to make it look like the front house, but it should be familial and in keeping with the general architectural style of the front. This is the maximum build out of the zoning envelope within the parking and zoning guidelines. And we just wanted to distinguish the inner, let's stay on that elevation. So we're trying to just distinguish the the existing house from the back section that would be added later. With that, we would appreciate your thoughts and guidance on where we're headed with this thing. It's very, very similar to the project that we did down the street earlier, where we added, I think, six units, and that's a much larger addition than this one. But it's in the same vein in terms of addition to a 14th Street house. The difference probably mostly being it's on a corner lot, and we've tried to be respectful of what that's about. But I will also mention that we did not include the landscaping in the renderings just because it obscures the architectural details. But those would be part of a landscape plan that we would submit, and they're actually part of the phase 1 plan as well. So with that, I would appreciate your thoughts and guidance.
Kurt, did you ever consider clapboard on the back phase 3 element?
We did. I didn't really like the way that it looked, just that it sort of throws the massing off. We did a model study that did that, but it didn't strike me as appropriate. And I think that it would be appropriate to say that we would do the brick on the back, if we did it in brick, in a different color brick, so that it would be distinguishable from the original in the house. When I'm saying not different, like not glaringly so, but just consistent with the Secretary's standards, that it should be easily distinguishable as a separate piece that was added later of its time.
Sorry Robert Watkins, did I accidentally hit the record button on the bottom of my screen? I don't know if I've messed up did I screw anything up? That was like a second ago. Are you still recording?
You shouldn't have messed anything up because you're not host.
I didn't think I could, but I've got a little message on top of my screen.
Recording on my end, if that helps.
Okay, good.
I really don't know, Carl. I'm sorry.
All right.
But I think we can just keep moving forward.
Good, thank you. Sorry about that. I was aiming for the chat button, and yeah, sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt everyone.
No, thanks. I mean, as you know, we do a lot of model studies just to try to figure out what looks reasonable, without turning it into a precious little object in some weird way that it's not appropriate. But it's a fabric building, and we're trying to do something simple and straightforward that complements the house without killing it. So.
Everyone's so quiet. Kurt, I think the way that you put a hyphen between the existing house and the kind of new addition on phase 3, I think that's working in your favor. For what it's worth, and I'm not sure this would prevent me from voting for what you've drawn, but you said you don't like how the rear elevation of phase 2 looks, and I actually find phase 2 a more successful addition, and maybe it's just the scale and the fact that it's exciting, but it feels more like you've added on to a house, whereas the back of phase 3 reads as an apartment building. Very clearly says I'm an apartment building, and I guess it is an apartment building. So it's but I don't know if that's it. Just jumped out at me as a little bit contextually seems a little problematic, and I'm not sure if there's a solution.
Unfortunately, it's an alley and a parking lot, but
right. That's a fair comment.
I agree, and to that end, I mean, I can't, obviously we're not looking at it, but that's why I asked the question about the clapboard. I feel like that would be an appropriate material for the rear volume as well.
Okay.
But I think probably either could be argued to be appropriate under our guidelines.
I'm wondering if you do something as dumb as, dumb's the wrong word, I realize, but maybe you actually change the trim color from the hyphen on, that all of that gets painted and not in bright white, but in something more muted, maybe related to the brick being a little bit darker, perhaps for the addition.
Yeah, I would like. That's a good suggestion.
And that way the hyphen recesses the hyphen a little bit.
Yeah.
Makes it a little less of this, entrance at the side of the building, and just kind of, I don't mean dull it down, but basically make the addition a little less, a little more secondary to the main block of the house.
That's a good suggestion.
And the parking lot side, it doesn't really do it for me either, but it's on the parking lot side. So, it sort of begs for a door or something, but I'm assuming that the plan doesn't allow for that. Is that true?
It's possible that we could. There are some kitchen and living areas that we could work on that a little bit more.
I think a door would just make it feel more domestic,
Yeah.
Just a door or two. Even if it reads as a duplex, it would still make it more domestic.
Or the other thing we looked at is essentially a full height window door that opens with just a railing in front of it or something like that, so that it's.
Yeah, I just think, because right now I totally with Carl. It looks like any town apartment building, and I'm not insulting your architecture. I'm just saying that's what it looks like.
No harm done. I understand the problem exactly.
Or even perhaps if the it's symmetrical and it obviously stacked, if one of the windows was something different, so it didn't look like 4 equal mirrored units.
They're actually slightly
You
different.
pulled the bump out across, Carl, so it read like a block and then a side piece. You know what I mean? I thought that's where you're going with it.
Say that again.
If you didn't have, if the bump outs were like, maybe you didn't have a bump out on one side and the other one came across, so it was the same scale as the house when you were on the corner. But I think doors would do it.
Okay, good idea. That's fine. Thank you.
Even doors with a little porch or something. I don't know.
I don't have
Just
a lot
something
of
more domestic.
I don't have a lot of clearance to the setback line of the alley, which is the problem.
Understood. I just think it needs a little more domestic. That's all.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any significant hangups that Kurt should know about before coming back to us with phase 2 or phase 3?
I was curious what other BAR members think about the continuation of the roof line and eaves and sort of roof style onto the addition. Sorry, I'm a little bit tired. Whether we want for that to be a continuation and for it to look uniform, or whether we would rather the addition have eaves and cornice that are a little bit distinguished from the original building. And I'm plowing through the guidelines trying to find something right now.
Yeah.
Just would appreciate other people's comments.
That's where I think color would do the trick.
I agree with that. Yeah. The problem that you get into is that if we begin to shift the cornice and roof lines around very much, you start to throw the vertical proportion of the building all off.
Right.
So if we can distinguish it with a color trim that's subtle but distinguishes it, that would be my preference, obviously. It just makes it a much more difficult building project to get everything to line up right.
I think in this case, because there's going to be so much brick, the new brick will be, even if you tried to match the color, I think the new brick is going to make it very clear what's old and what's new.
Yeah. We've had pretty good luck with shifting the color of the brick just enough so that it looks familial, but it's distinguishable.
And we are talking about real brick and not soaps that are glued up to a wall.
Real brick, yes.
Kurt, you should not have told us that.
Okay, fair enough.
So gentlemen, in chapter 4, part 3, additions, number 6, attachment to existing building, 6B. The new design should not use the same wall plane, roof line, or cornice line of the existing structure. I'm not expressing a personal opinion. I'm just reading from our guidelines, gentlemen.
No, that's always a thing that's in there that we
Page 22
very
of our.
frequently. I don't want to say we disregard it, but it is often. Yeah.
And yeah, and I understand the applicant's concern and, you know, the continuity of use between one floor, the same floor, the original building and in addition, but I just figured I would.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Sherry. And we did study that a little bit with the models. It doesn't help the proportions of the, it doesn't help the proportions of the assembly of the buildings at all. The other truth is that when you're looking at it in an elevation, you're really seeing it in a slightly different view than you would if you were on the street or looking up with parallax. So I don't know that the roofs are flat enough. I don't even know if you really see the roof line pieces at all that much from the normal experience of being on the street looking at the building.
Mm-hmm.
But good point though. Thank you.
And another thought might be stucco. I don't know if you looked at that.
I had not looked at that, but we can certainly look at that. It's from my standpoint, it's a little bit like too much jewelry on the thing. You got too many materials going on, and it becomes difficult to get them to work out very well. So,
Would that be ephes or stucco, James?
Ephes, is that what you meant to say, Sherry?
I said ephes.
I know you did. Not using Jeff Dreyfus's terminology today?
Nope.
My biggest fear about ephes on the back is that some idiot will drive a car into it and we'll have an ongoing repair problem forever.
I guess my only other comment would be, I kind of did just some Google Street View running up and down the road, maybe touring the neighborhood to see if there are other houses that have had large additions that are successful that might draw inspiration.
James, there was one right across the street, I believe.
Did I just miss it?
I can't tell which number it was, but I think it just went up 1411. I believe that was it. Others might remember had a pretty similar challenge of constructing a 2-story addition in the back.
This is virtually the identical problem from a massing standpoint as the project that we did 1 block over on 14th Street. And we wrestled with that with the BAR for a lot, I think through three rounds, and finally got it right. But we tried to learn a little bit from that exercise in terms of what we did here. But the massing on this building is a lot smaller than that one. That was a 3-story addition. Anyway.
Since everyone else is silent, Kurt, are there any questions that you have for us?
I'm assuming that the silence is that we're generally in the ballpark somewhere, but we just have some decisions to make about materials and final details and things like that. And if there's a general consensus that it's architecturally competent, I'll be happy and go on to try to figure the rest of it out. But beyond that, I'm grateful for your thoughts and suggestions.
So Kurt, procedurally, would you come back with phase 2 and then, phase 3 in like 2024 or something like that? Is that the thought?
I have to look at what the duration of an approval is, but we might come back with both phases at the same time.
Okay.
I think that if the timing works out on our phase 1 work and it's possible to build phase 2 before July or August, we might well try to do that. I don't think phase 3 can be built any sooner than that, but if I would rather have a unified approval for the whole project that we could proceed with without having to come back unless it expired due to the procedural timing on how long the duration of an approval lasts. So, and I don't know that right off the top of my head. Jeff, you may know how long the approval is good for, but
Well, everything in the 18 months.
yeah,
and if there's any problems, the 1 month extension,
yeah,
relatively simple.
we would probably build the phase 3 part of it in within that time frame then. So I would probably come back and just do this, save you all another late night sometime.
And I think if you get an approved site plan, I think your approval is tied to that site plan. So if site plan is good for 5 years, I think you get that much time. I think I'm throwing numbers out, but
yeah,
get your site plan approved and it extends your COA.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you for your comments, and if you have any other things, let me know, and we'll go from there. But we'll probably bring this back to you fairly soon, I think.
Great. Well, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate your help and guidance. Good to see you.
Have a good evening.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
All right. I need a break. How long of a break do you guys want? 5 minutes, 10 minutes?
And
Yeah,
Says
we're in
15.
good shape. Yeah.
10.
10?
10.
Okay, and I'll go ahead and promote Bill Chapman. We will reconvene at 8:20.
James, I keep meaning to screenshot some of the camera views of you. Your chair doesn't show up, and for a while it looked like you had some interesting dance moves going on.
Yeah.
You had a great one last time you were on the under one of the colonnades, and I swear it looked like you were in one of the rocking chairs.
Yeah, they're all stock UVA background filters. You mean this one?
Yeah, I
And if
think.
you-
I don't know,
and
but
if
you
you-
leaned back and
Yeah,
you
you
were
scoot
in.
Hold on.
Nice.
It's crazy.
Hey, what's with that raven on your shoulder?
Yeah. Well, I also just realized you go to video settings. Oh, dang it. They had it. There's now a way. Watch this. Check this out. I suddenly have a beard. Give me a little more. I look like Robert Watkins.
Wait, is Robert's
In a good way.
Robert's beard's real though?
It is
No,
real.
this whole time I've just been using the filter. That's my secret.
Actually, you know what? I'm just realizing Jody and I are somewhat outnumbered here. And Andy, do you have a beard or you just have side? Jeez Louise.
I just don't really do anything lately.
Well, I always notice when we get on, like, my hair is like all over the place.
I can do.
Yeah, the top of your hair is always all over the place.
Purple lipstick.
I know.
Up on.
It just has a mind of its own.
I tried to grow a beard during COVID. It just didn't work.
Thank you, Sherry.
Okay, let's
Can the chair start us off, please?
yes, we are discussing 120 Oakmont Circle. Preliminary discussion. Jeff.
I'm trying to like figure out which screen is what. You're right. I was trying to write my secret squirrel staff report here that, all right, I don't need this.
Did you say secret squirrel?
Yeah. My code word. Where did it go? All right, not here. Man, this is just sorry, I'm just gonna go right to the just to my copy, and I can talk while it's not a whole lot to tell you. So Mr. Chapman's on the line here tonight. He asked me I don't know, a couple weeks ago if the BAR would consider something a little bit more contemporary as an addition to the rear of the house here at Oakhurst Circle. This you all reviewed this back in, I don't know, like a year and a half ago to do some work on the back of it. Let's see. There it is. Okay. So it's a 1950s house. It's non-contributing relative to the local district. However, it is a contributing structure in the National Register district, the Oakhurst Gildersleeve Neighborhood Historic District. However, while it's not contributing, any new construction or alteration is subject to BAR review. And Bill didn't have a lot to, not a lot of information. I think, there is an interesting rendering, and then he and I spoke, and I added a couple of examples, sort of channeling Peter Waltman, and just to kind of illustrate what he had in mind. And really the goal here is not even as to the extent of a preliminary discussion, but we could certainly treat it as such. I think he really, and he can speak for himself. The question is this something that the BAR is even willing to entertain before he goes further? So there it is. And I if you recall, that there's across the street was the project that that was approved last fall. Not quite as contemporary as this, but certainly different from the nature of the historic property. So, I hesitate to offer an opinion one way or another. It's intriguing. This is on the edge of the district, so the boundary is the back. It's a kind of an intriguing idea. I think the comment I offered to Bill, I said I can't say what the BAR may or may not say, but I said probably the thing is that as construction elements, as components, sort of like Peter Waldman did, and like in these images, it'd be an interesting discussion. However, these things were installed and had along the side Maersk line or whatever. If they looked like a bunch of stacked up shipping containers, then I felt like you all might have a different perspective. So with that as the introduction, Bill's here, and maybe he can expound on what he has in mind. And I would focus on the rendering that he provided, and I hand it over to you all.
Okay, so should I jump in?
Please do.
Dive in. It's all yours.
Okay, just for a bit of context, we own 10 buildings in this district. 8 of them are restored craftsman structures that are kind of what you'd expect if you know the street. One of them is a big contemporary apartment building on the corner that Wolf Ackerman designed 7 years ago. And then there's this thing, which is a 1950 cottage. It's kind of the oddball. We do have the by right ability to add these little rooms to the back of it. It would be sort of an expansion of our lodging business. It shares a driveway with the building next door, which is yellow in this picture, but it's been painted white since then. It shares a driveway, so and that's the only way to get back there. But for that reason, I started thinking modular construction, because I don't think I could have construction vehicles clogging up that driveway for a year while conventional construction was done. So I started thinking modular stacked units, and that led me to shipping containers. I found an architect that knows a lot about that topic who did that rendering. And that's how the idea evolved. One thing that's not clear from this picture is that, from this rendering, is that there's a big gap between the old structure and the new. They're connected by a deck, but it sort of leaves the back of the existing structure intact. It's not really attached because there's a kind of a walkway deck in between. So in that sense, you could even view it as maybe being temporary. You could take it down one day, but it doesn't really affect, it doesn't really change the gray cottage as much as just build something behind it. And there's a view there on the left of the back of the cottage. And really, I just, I can do, there's a lot more design that can be done, obviously, to make it work. But I just wanted to know, I mean, if you guys said right now, there's no way that thing's getting through BAR, then I won't do it. I'd be curious to know, if anyone had any ideas what it should look like. I hesitate to sort of imitate the gray cottage because it sounds kind of dull. I thought we could do something more playful here. We do own a lot of old buildings, so it'd be fun to do something new. And that's kind of all I have to say about it at the moment.
Well, thank you. We have no attendees in the public, so you guys can just go ahead and have at it.
Can we just jump into comments?
Go for it.
Commenting questions or questioning
Go
comments?
for it. Whatever you want to
Well,
do.
I have one quick question for Jeff. Where did Jeff go?
Behind this post-it note.
Ah, there he is. Jeff, refresh, what exactly is the status of this house?
So it is, according to the local district, it is not contributing.
So he can hack into it if he wants to, yes?
He could knock it down if he wanted to.
Okay.
But whatever he builds there requires, and any addition to it requires BAR review.
Okay, and so this was a leading question, obviously. And Bill, do you know, is where the rendering currently stops, is that the edge of the rear setback line?
Well, we studied the setbacks and this rendering fits with 20-foot containers, if that's the question.
Well, I was just wondering whether I'm sort of thinking about your square footage and just curious whether or not it can be more linear as opposed to a 3-story block.
I would say not much more footprint than what is here would fit in the setbacks.
Okay. Because I can see it actually moving. I don't know what your square footage objectives are, but I could see it actually going all the way up to the back of the ridge of the gable running across parallel to the street. But I think that 3 stories is where I have a little bit of an issue. I'd rather see it more demure than that, but I don't have any issue with it in terms of its aesthetic intention. The house isn't sacred, but I could see it doing more like an interlocking Lego or something like that, where it goes in that L behind the one gable and, get kind of redesign that whole corner of the house. But the 3 stories, I don't buy the 3 stories.
Okay, good feedback.
What's the zoning category? Do you know? I see the property information. I don't see it on there.
This is an R3 property.
R3. Okay, so you don't have a 35-foot max height or anything like that. You can go a little higher.
There's a max height, but it's from the street level, and the backyard of this thing is way below the street level.
Okay. Yeah, I was concerned by the, one of our guidelines says something about, do not overpower an existing house, or, overwhelm, or I forget where it is, but basically don't make an addition that's so much larger than the existing house that it, is kind of looms over it, but the house is not contributing. So that becomes less of a problem for me. Yeah, and I have no concerns with contemporary construction back there. I think Tim is, 3 stories, got to understand, we need to better understand the context around that and whether that's going to be, is that going to loom over the neighbors? And I'm not worried about UVA, but, is it going to stand out as being too big on the street? But I think that's something you could study and figure out for us.
Yeah, we could come back with, what the front elevation looks like, and we'd see that. We just haven't done that part yet.
Maybe a site section that goes up to the street might be useful too.
Because even if it was like half of the 3rd story poking out, so it read almost like a monitor from the street, as opposed to a full story. But that's why I was just wondering whether you could get your linear, if you had any potential for more linear move, so that but it sounds like not, because of your setback.
I think that's right. It's pretty much maxed out the site back there.
Understood.
And what's the change in topo? What's the change in elevation, Bill? Because it looks like you could take advantage of that with this. Have you had a topo done, or just do you know offhand how it drops?
We have a topo. I don't know what the footages are, but this is effectively a 4-story high addition because there's a parking level below.
Right.
The house is 3 stories tall because there's a basement level, the ground level, and then the big roof line. So I don't know if that answers the question, but it feels like it does take it. If there wasn't a big low backyard, this thing would be towering way over the house, but I don't think it is towering way over the house. It's just sort of like close to the same height as the house.
Be great for us to see actual elevations. And I wondered if you, the way that you have the parking configured, they have to go around the entire back of the house and then they come underneath, they turn around and come towards the street. I wonder if you went in at the side somehow and had configured parking, whether you'd buy some maybe footage, like Tim said, in the back. Looks like the topo falls off a lot. You could take advantage of that.
Yeah, we just recently built a ramp connecting the parking at 122, which is the yellow building, down to this backyard. And that based on where the topo was, there's kind of only one place to put that ramp, but that part's done.
So I'm not ready to dismiss this property because the house itself is not contributing to the local district. It is contributing to the state and national historic district. And there is an environment with contributing buildings on both sides. Our guidelines under design 3B, the new work should be differentiated from the old, check, and should be compatible with the massing, size, scale, and architectural features to protect the historic integrity of the property and its environment. So I don't have an issue with the modern design. I have more of an issue with the scale relationship between the addition and the existing house and the historic district that it's in, the context.
Well put, Jody. I agree with that and with the other sentiments already expressed. And I'll just note that, because of the circle, the nature of this circle, which is a distinguishing feature of this neighborhood, there are a lot of very three-dimensional and kind of rotating views of these homes. And there is seems like this property is pretty visible from the sides. And for a property that is very clearly a one-story house at the front with pretty low elevation, I feel like that 4 stories is going to be pretty significant. I don't think a front elevation is going to tell the story of what the real experience is on the street and in that neighborhood. But I agree with my other colleagues that contemporary architecture seems really quite appropriate for this kind of new addition. I think the containerized language can be both elegant, as in some of the example that was shown. It also can be really bad. So I think having really understanding what that will look like would be imperative if we choose to go that route.
I'd echo what Breck just said. Those are about my comments.
Okay, so it sounds like maybe a lot more design work to really show what it's going to look like, and maybe shave off the top floor would be a good next step.
Yeah, I think the massing really needs to fall in line a little bit more than the aesthetics.
Or at the very least, find ways to prove to us that the massing is appropriate.
Yeah.
I think that's going to take some work to, show us how this relates to the context. Any other thoughts, or Bill, do you have any other questions for us?
No, I think it's helpful. I'm not hearing any absolute no's, and I kind of suspected that the height would be an issue. So we'll knock a story off of it and maybe come back with a SketchUp model or something where we can really look around all sides and see what it looks like from the street, stuff like that. This is
One
nothing
thing-
we're going to do like tomorrow. This will probably be, 2 years from now, but I will be back.
I just know this may be personal preference, but I think one of the things that's successful with the examples that you showed was a maybe a restrained or considered color palette that's really carefully considered in relationship to the other architectural details, stair, metalwork, window mullions. I've seen, some examples of these are much more like dropping containers in place, and they're different colors, and that could be a very, might get a very different response in this kind of context.
They still have their graffiti on the sides.
Yeah, I agree. We're going to have this painted in sort of earth tone colors. I think this would be the first stacked container hotel project in the US. I know you guys have all seen those pictures of hotels made out of containers with Israel and Europe and Asia. And so we did some research. There's not a single one in the United States.
Jeff, I think that's your machine making the echo. Bill, do you drop those with a pretty massive crane over the house?
You pull the crane down into the driveway behind 122 Oakhurst, which is the big yellow thing, and then you lift them over from there.
Wow.
They don't really go over the house. They go down beside the house and then get moved over. I appreciate everyone's time. It's been very valuable for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I guess, Jeff, do you have more stuff for us?
I have a very brief question for you. Robert, you want to throw up that thing that I sent you all? So the Valentine House, which is around the corner here on Park Street, Park and Bearish. The owner had asked me if I'd like to create a door. So yeah, hold on right there for a second, Robert. So Farish is on the left. If you all recall, I think last summer approved a fence, or maybe last spring. But so looking at the front porch here, you can see single window above, and then go ahead and go to the next slide, because then you get the so there you see, and it's obscured by the tree, but you see the center door flanked by two windows, and then above is a window onto this sitting porch. And the interest is in installing a doorway at that center opening. I had, you can scroll down, Robert. So he had kind of a rendering that someone sketched, and go down one more, Robert. I had asked to say, well, what about putting the door, the way the rooms are laid out, putting the door at the hallway, and maybe balancing it out with a window on the other side of the existing. It does start to clutter things up, but they said that there's a radiator inside where the door on the side would be, so that complicates things. So really, so you can go back up one, Robert, and that's one more. So the idea is, would the BAR entertain this? Obviously, it's something because of the way the roof projects and the eave comes down there. That's have to be something custom, but I just said I would ask what you all thought, and I given I mean, this is one of the really cool houses in Charlottesville, and although it's had a lot of appendages added over the years, it has definitely evolved over time. But whether or not there were any really strong feelings one way or the other before the applicant presented an application. So, or the individual.
Can you
So
go back
that's
to
all.
the Original?
What's that?
Can you go back to the original photo?
Yep, got one. Yep.
So my question, Jeff, if you could turn your mic off.
Up or off?
There we go. It looks to me like it's 4 panes wide, the window that's currently there. And so I'm wondering if they couldn't make a custom door that's really 2 narrow French doors so that the muntin profiles and the glazing pattern basically essentially matches the window itself. Do you understand what I'm saying? I guess granted they've got a single pane on the bottom, which makes it a little tricky to do a French door, but might make it look more like a window.
I mean, it's not quite tall enough to pull off a triple hung, right? Is it?
Probably not.
That rail's probably at 5 feet, yes, Jeff?
That's too Jeffersonian for a Victorian.
Well, you wouldn't see it, you know?
So I don't know. I know you'd have to, probably stay up good 6 inches plus, keep the threshold up. It's possible. Whatever he's going to do, it's going to be custom. I think a doorway opening, out as he had proposed probably isn't wise. Probably easiest to go in and then he can at least sheet up and underneath the eaves, or maintain that same line. I think that would be my thought is if you don't alter that opening and all you do is lower it down to a sill.
You could have a jib door.
If you do that, why not just go all out and make it a pivot door with a lock, take it all the way down, leave the configuration and make it a pivot door since the opening is so big. And you just do a modern operation, you never pick up on it except when you open it, obviously.
Can we back up just a second?
Yeah.
That balustrade looks like it's like 2 feet tall.
Yeah.
What is that? So are you guys going to approve a 42-inch tall guardrail on this roof? So why are we talking about a door?
I think there's also concern of the roof surface. I mean, you're not supposed to walk around on a roof surface. So are they going to put a deck on this, which again is going to raise it up even higher?
Go down.
I think this is and Jeff.
Yeah, the railing is a good point.
Yeah.
It's going to be like 5 feet tall.
I mean, our house has exactly this, but it was grandfathered,
Yeah, I mean, I have a little short door upstairs out on my roof that actually, had people hacked it in there probably in the 50s. But you're raising the issue with the railing changes things because now he's in a code issue. That's got nothing to do with what the BAR says. He would have to do that. And we would have some difficulties with that, but I think you're getting into maybe a level of investment. And that's what I had said to him. I said, it's the little things that are going to nail you on this one, just trying to fit around this and fit around that. There's nothing typical here.
I think climbing up the window.
I mean, actually, it's a residence, so you'd really only need 36 inches. You didn't need 42, but regardless.
I don't know. They got a lot of residents in there.
Yep.
It's also listed on VRBO for rent. So I think the owners would have a problem with that liability wise.
He said he wants to, he's tired of having people in his house and he wants to just live in it with I think he's getting married. So, who might have questioned, but you raised some good points. I think it would be to say, you're gonna have to raise that railing and alter it, that's a bit of a problem. It's certainly a cost on his part. I mentioned about, I asked what kind of roof is it? Is it I'm assuming flat seam, but he'd have to do something that he was, you can't just go out there and put a chair on the roof. Excuse me. And, just the cost to configure something that would fit in an opening and function, I think it's, I don't want to say cost prohibitive. This clearly isn't what's driving this necessarily, but I think I know what to tell them and say, if you could do it without changing the railing, we could figure something out. But you're gonna have to do some modifications to this that really alter the appearance and think twice.
If cost is no object, he could alter it without altering the appearance.
Right.
It would have to be cost is no object.
Yeah.
Well, having just read a lot of our guidelines very carefully about deference.
Yep.
If we allowed a window out there, the safety code will override anything we would say. So we're essentially allowing that to be changed.
Yeah, he's better off just climbing out the window.
Much more fun that way anyway.
That was not me. That's all I had. And, it's been a long afternoon. I think we can independently kind of continue the discussion from earlier, a little clearer mind. I felt like there was some, well, it's going to need some discussion that we can have at another time. Place update.
Nothing to say.
Okay. Oh, I do want to, the lighting again, the lighting on the mall, I put together a plan, and that's really, so step one towards lighting victory. And I believe it or not, got a call the other day from a woman in Provo, Utah, and heard that I am doing creative and innovative things with lights and signage. Wanted to know what it was. So I gave her Tim's number. So, and I just, in case, I don't know how much is floating around out there, but the code building's starting to put itself back, or the mall back together. And there've just been all kinds of questions like, well, do we do the mortar joints with brick? Do we do the sand joint? Do we do this, do that? And what I've said on behalf of so the design review is that, well, either replicate what was there, or you can replicate what was done on the mall. They have been approved, and don't change anything other than those steps that were approved, that step alteration at the old entrance to the ice rink. I said, and so follow your site plan. But if you change the bricks or change the materials, or you change something, bring it back. But that's, at this point, it's just simply a discussion with parks.
So the park thing there just got completely dropped ultimately, right?
And that seems to be kind of some of what's blowing all this up, is people said, well, they're supposed to be doing all this stuff. I'm like, no, that all got, it just, it was, I don't want to say unworkable, but it was unwieldy. And yeah, it was dropped. And it's just, that's what happened. And so, their thing is to put them all back the way it looked. And as I said, if you can butt the bricks together like the other part of the mall, or do the mortar joint, whatever, but if you do something different, then tell me. But so they keep asking, well, can you approve it? Can you approve it? I said, there's nothing to approve. So
So while you're at that end of the mall, are we ever going to see a submittal for the crossing that they're supposed to redesign? Not meaning them, but the city was supposed to. Where they put their concrete bumps on Second Street there, that was all supposed to be, that was a totally, what's the word I want to use? That was done totally ad hoc with no approvals, and they promised they were going to come back to the DAR some time ago now with an engineered design, and they have yet to do so. Speaking of recommendations.
And for context, that predates me. So
I
that's
know.
that's been a long time.
It has.
Yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I'm trying to stay out of this one because it's like, wrap it up. You have a site plan,
Yeah, this has nothing to do with those guys. I'm just talking about the crossing at Second Street. Just asking. The Parks was supposed, or Public Works was supposed to submit something and they never did.
It's like the tree breaks, right?
Yes, exactly. Or the wall over at what's the cemetery off of Locust?
Maplewood.
That's in the works. I'm just not. I've learned that in the work. I mean, I've already been here 3 years, and so in the works could be another 3 years. But there is funding for that, to my understanding. All right. Well, just if somebody run into you and says, "Oh my God, what's going on with the bricks at the code building?" You say, they're returning it per the approved site plan, and we're not aware of any changes. So, or if somebody's asks you something about it, you just let me know. There just seems to be a lot of stories flying around that, I even had to tell a colleague at a meeting that that ADA stuff never happened. That's a non-issue here. So if anything I can do to help quell any questions that are going on out there, just let me know. Otherwise, nope, we will talk very soon.
Two quick things. One is you should go check out what Westminster was able to do with the removal of the tree and the wall. I think they did a really excellent job with that masonry over by Beta Bridge. And to put another, kind of, the city's now giving them all kinds of heck with the streets department and how they're doing the asphalt. It's just lost on everybody that they've done a huge service to the city on their own dime that they didn't need to do. And lastly, I just like to, we really threw Robert Edwards into the fire last couple meetings. He joined the last one with like 2 hours notice, and then and then just another day in the office with today's meetings. It would be nice to find a time for us to introduce ourselves a little more properly and also hear about his background. And it's pretty awesome.
I will tell you, there's a note got circulated. It looks like end of summer earliest that they are planning on city being back in, or most of staff being back. So I suspect that means, we'll be Zooming for some time. But I've been vaccinated. I know Robert has. We should all just go stand in a huddle somewhere and, compare beards.
I win.
I'm telling you, Robert's grows while he's sitting there. You can watch it. All right. I don't have anything else. And I again appreciate the input this afternoon. And
I got one quick lighting thing. The lights in the outbuilding at 104 Hartman Mill Road have been fully restored and fully functional.
It was a restoration project that we were using state-of-the-art tools.
Yeah.
Thank you, James.
I may or may not have used an alligator clip to rig that light back up, but
right.
It worked.
I made him. He worked on the one over by the mannequin, so I was able to focus.
So wait, isn't he tearing that building down ultimately?
That's the plan.
That's the plan. It's,
Well, it's got a well-installed light now.
well, you know, just to make it all perfect, you know, after all that, because James kept saying to me, we need a step stool. So I'm like, I'd written on my hand, step stool. I took my step stool. I left it.
I didn't need it.
So I'm going back
Oh,
over
you
there.
left it over there? Oh my God.
Yeah, it's like, you know, I didn't feel like turning around. So I'm going to text him on. I'm just telling him I'm going to come back sometime when he's banging on Buddy or whatever. I don't know exactly what it's called when he plays Buddy, but he did say Buddy is watching and that we should speak kindly of him.
That's the name of the mannequin or the creepy doll, whatever. Anyways, the lights are working.
It's working.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Good night, all.
Thank you all very much. See you next
Good night,
week.
everybody.
See you tomorrow, Robert.
Right on.